That is my be able to take pictures of our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you do it on your phone or on my phone?
I can do it on my phone and text it to you. Yeah,
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, that's great. Sure.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Britner School Board of Education business meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Next up, we're going to have a declaration of a quorum. We have all members present. So we move to 1.03, the adoption. All right, good evening. Welcome to so moved.
Second.
Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Lonis? Yes. Mr. Garden? Yes. Ms. Loverto? Yes. Ms. Delberto? Yes. And Mrs. Vickis? Yes. And I also vote yes. Moving on to 1.04, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe we have some Wyland and Pratt Elementary here. I'd like you to come on up and start on top of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's stay there.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good. Right. Next to you, folks. You play hard? They're faster than I am.
Moving on to 1.05, School of the Month, and we have two schools of the month. We have Wyoming and Practice. Let's call it Pratt. So I can first on my list. Oh, Wyoming? Okay. Well, I'm just read. I am not, I'm so I don't know how to trouble.
Lisa, I think you pressed a whole bunch, or somebody pressed a whole bunch of
No, we've got the.
with the clicker.
Oh, not at all. And actually, if you want to go behind the woods, we'll go up there too. To take pictures. I'll go up there too. So if you want to. I don't even know if I about a minute. I'm actually going to sneak up and get a couple right now. So that's totally
And
free.
I am very excited to have some of our amazing student and staff leaders with us tonight. So we have Diane Logan and Zadira Barahona Castillo and Billy Davis with us. And then we also have our two equity leaders, Ms. Kristen Darby, who's one of our EL teachers, and Ms. Nikki Carson, who's one of our fifth grade teachers, and Dr. Gunn and I, who is back here. We just feel very privileged to work with such amazing students and staff and families. So thank you to our families who are here this evening. So as we get started here, we always want to connect all of the work that we do at Wyland with the Britner vision and mission. And what we're going to talk about tonight really connects to many components of the equity statement. So you'll hear that tonight. So I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Darby and Ms. Carson.
Good evening, everyone. So Ms. Carson and I are going to be talking about how at Wyland we create a welcoming and inclusive school community at Wyland. At Wyland, we strive to create equitable, authentic cultural classroom environments that promote student voice, acceptance, and kindness amongst all students. We also encourage students to be their authentic selves by embracing cultural backgrounds, languages, and family traditions. We love to invite families. We collaborate with families. We have engaging activities with families. We have lots of events with families. We really value family input and support at Wyland.
At Wyland, we try to promote student voice. We invited the Game Changers from the high school over to talk with us about their experiences as a student in the district. They came to our staff meeting. We also, Christian and I and Dr. Greenstein, attend the equity meetings, and we bring back information from those equity meetings to our staff meetings. We feel like we really created a space where our staff feel brave and they feel safe and they can truly express their feelings. We also try to promote wellness. Our wellness team at Wyland does something called Take Care Tuesdays, and that's an event led by them every Tuesday. And basically we just want to encourage staff to take care of themselves.
To inspire creative and kind and collaborative leaders and learners who think critically and problem solve in nurturing, inclusive, and safe environment.
Vision. Wyland Ministry is a partnership with parents and community. We achieve academic, social, and emotional success for all students by empowering them to become lifelong learners and productive citizens and
There are more than 11 languages spoken at Wyland. Our families come from over 12 countries.
At Wyland, our students have many opportunities to become leaders and learners. We learn different strategies in every subject. We are happy that we can go on field trips again this year. Fifth grade went to J. Edgarstown. We learned how to spend money and use credit cards. Everyone got to learn about a job. Fourth grade went to the Forest Park Playscape and looked for ideas to bring back to Wyland to make a sensory garden. Second and third grade just had virtual field trips with the Magic House.
Our teachers, counselors, and principals help all students learn strategies to stay focused and ready to learn and what to do if they are reaching the breaking point with windows of stress tolerance.
At Wyland, we've been working really hard to not only create a diverse staff, but also an inclusive staff to make sure our diverse staff feels part of the community. We used our training that the district provided on implicit biases really quite a bit in our hiring process. We really tried to ask ourselves not if someone was a good fit, but rather what could this person potentially bring to our building and how could they enrich the district.
With our family partnerships, again, family involvement is very important to Wyland. We really embrace that. So it's important to Wyland that we have family input and involvement. We have monthly meetings. We call FINS, which is like our version of PTO. It's called FINS, stands for Parents Helping in Schools. We've become more inclusive with our EL families. We offer English classes for our Spanish speaking or families from that have any first language for another. And we also host EL parent meetings 2 to 3 times a year to help keep those families involved in those families.
We learn about Hispanic cultures throughout the school year and celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month.
Our staff and students use Spanish in classrooms, on bulletin boards, and on announcements. We also make sure that we have interpreters available for our families.
We celebrate our veterans and active military personnel each summer. There is a wall of honor where our Wyland students can display pictures. We look forward to recognizing our veterans in the building next year. Each year we have traditions like before winter break so that we can learn more about winter traditions that are celebrated by Wyland families.
We learn about Black history throughout the school year, and each classroom creates a bulletin board to share.
We also learn about abilities and the school-wide learning and sharing in this month. Each week, teachers choose a student of the week who shows the Wyland way, being respectful, responsible, and safe, or shows the word of the month. The students of the week are read on announcements and get a certificate to take home. Students participate in circles in their classrooms so that they can share their thoughts and ideas, problem solve together, and build classroom communities.
Student leaders help record video announcements each day. They help lead the Pledge of Allegiance, the Wyland Pledge lunch, birthdays, and the mindfulness moments, and also give shout outs to students and staffs.
All fifth grade students can apply to have a job. Some of the jobs include classroom leaders, office helpers, breakfast helpers, hallway leaders, art leaders, bus leaders, and technology leaders.
Wyland uses the OAS anti-bullying program to create a bully-free school community. A class meeting is held each week to teach the bullying-free rules and teach about creating a welcoming and inclusive school community. We have the spirit program and we learn ways to calm down and work out problems.
Does anyone have any questions? Maybe our jobs, because we get to help different classrooms and different grades, and it makes us feel more better about ourselves and feel more like inclusive in what we do at school.
When you think about violence, so my question is for the students, when you think about violence, what's the one word that you would use to describe it?
One word I would use is fun, because there's a lot of different activities and different special things that we can do at the school, and we learn different and fun ways to do it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, before everybody leaves, because I wanted to make sure to recognize all the parents of the children that are with Wyland, I'd like to say thank you so much for being here and coming here tonight. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to the visit from friends. Thank you. Welcome so much for coming this morning.
Good evening, everyone. We are very excited to be here tonight to talk about our work we've done around restorative mediation and conflict resolution. This is a work in progress, but it's something that we've seen a lot of growth with. And so we have here tonight two amazing students and one wonderful staff member that I'm going to introduce. So we have Jill Mendel. She teaches fourth grade, and she has really taken us on with a lot of her students. And then we have Maria Williams and Chris Chandler. And so I'm going to just connect some of the work that we've done to our. We're trying to tell them to come in. Come on in. You can come right here. So just to connect us to our vision, definitely this work has helped us develop leaders. They really have to have that internal reflection to be able to work through this process. When we think about our mission, we're really helping them think critically and solve problems and giving them skills for successful living as they go into society. And then we pick specific parts of the equity statement that this applies to. Really, we're talking about purposeful relationships. We're talking about providing a safe and supportive space, and then also looking at restorative approaches to discipline that give students voice, that don't exclude students, and that are engaging them and giving efficacy to the. So the greater why is really about traditional discipline, really focusing, traditional discipline really is you break a rule, you get a consequence, you're excluded. And we know that interrupts education and we don't want that to happen. And that really doesn't teach anyone the skills that they need to solve problems in the long run. And so what it looks like, and what it should look like, this process is building mutual respect, building relationships, and also giving opportunities for that equitable dialogue between people and giving opportunities for shared decision making. In Crash, we're really focusing on active listening, really focusing on involving everyone, restoring harm, and then giving them opportunities to have action plans for future success. So enough of me talking though. And I'm not one right here. I'm gonna turn this over to Ms. Mendel here. And
All right, so in the classroom, we can actually do this two different ways. If a teacher observes a child is upset or they observe a conflict, they can initiate a mediation process. But it also can come from a student. A student has a problem the teacher isn't aware of. They can come to the teacher and request support and help to set up a mediation. So they can help solving the problem. So either way works. I try to avoid doing this during class time, most time it's recess or transitions. Sometimes it can work, but very rarely. And it can take about 2 to 30 minutes usually. The more experienced the student is with the process, the quicker it can happen. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pretend we had an event and we're going to model it. And so you can see what happens. So pretty typical problem. I have asked Chris here to go get in line in front of Brea. I said to him quietly, so he goes off to get in line. I turn around and talk to another student. And next thing I know, I hear yelling, screaming, and I see pushing. So I walk up to the kids. Now I have to get the kids to lunch so that we're not late. So I'm going to ask one of them to go to a different spot in the line. That gives them the time to walk down the steps and get a little time. And then I'm going to send the rest of the class, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to walk them through a mediation. Because we just had a problem upstairs, I think it's time to talk about it. All right, so let's take some deep breaths and get ourselves calm and ready to talk. Ready? Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. And breath out. So you ready to have a conversation about what happened upstairs?
Yes.
Are you ready to have a conversation?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Bria, I'm gonna let you go first. Can you tell Chris what happened and how it made you feel?
So I was up in line, and Chris had got in front of me, and I pushed him and I hit him, and he pushed me and I hit him back.
And how did it make you feel when you got in line?
It made me feel angry.
Okay. Now, Chris, you did a great job of just listening to her side. Now, I want you to repeat back what she said happened and how she felt about it.
I heard Brian say that I got in front of her in line and she pushed me and shoved me, and it made her feel mad when I got in front of her.
Did you do anything? Did she say anything about what you did?
And I was pushing and shoving her back.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? You good? You stand correctly? Did you get the information? Okay, excellent. Now, Chris, it's your turn. Are you going to stay quiet with your thoughts? All right. Now you're going to tell Brea your version.
I got in front of you because Miss Mendel told me to get in front of you on the line, and you pushed me and shoved me, then I pushed you and shoved you back, and it made me feel mad.
All right. Anything else? No. Okay. Brea, what did Chris say?
He said that he got in front of me because Miss Mendel told him to get in front of me, and I pushed him and shoved him. He pushed me and shoved me back, and it made him feel angry.
Okay. Now, anything either of you need to add? Okay, very good. Now, we had this problem. What can we do in the future? What agreements can we make or plans can we make to make sure this doesn't happen in the future? Brea, is there something you need from Chris?
To let me know if he has to get in front of me.
So you want him to use his words?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, what does she need from you?
For me to use my words instead of getting in front of her.
All right. Is that something you could do?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now, Chris, is there something you need from Brea?
I need Brea to ask before putting her hands on people when somebody get in front of her.
All right. So Brea, what did you need to say?
He said he needs me to ask instead of putting my hands on him.
All right, so he wants you to ask questions, right? All right, so what I heard you guys agreed to, can you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I heard is you're going to use your words before getting in front of someone in line, right? And you are going to ask questions to make sure you understand the situation before you put your hands or react to it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. The benefit to this is it took, what, maybe 2 or 3 minutes to do that whole thing, and really, this is very typical of what has happened. Sometimes our agreements are extreme, and we have to revisit them. We've had a few of those where 2 days later, like, this isn't working, can we talk about it again? But this avoids a lot of, no office referral here and all that good stuff. Brea has come from another district and was new to Crafts this year. And she has really taken advantage of this opportunity. So she wants to share her experiences now. I'll hold it for you.
At the beginning of the year, I had a problem with another classmate. I got so mad, I almost put my hands on him. Then at recess, I had a mediation with him. We made an agreement with each other that we could not go near each other or talk with each other. The mediation helped me. The mediation helped me solve the problem by finding a solution. Now, when I have a problem with another classmate, I stay calm and take deep breaths. I know now that I can have a mediation meeting that helps me to solve problems I cannot solve on my own.
Maria, I have a question. So now, after you've mediated that situation, are you able to be back around that student? Have you all worked out the issue together? You're still taking time?
And they're communicating through media. So like the other day, the other child wanted to ask for a question. He came to me and had me walk over with him so he could do that. So they're doing it with support. They're not quite ready to move that in there and try that, especially in unstructured settings. We'll get them there in the classroom first.
So the picture is another, this mediation that was run amongst some girls in 4th grade by one of our counselors. So it's used by our counselors and teachers. Any other questions for our students? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm so proud of you all. Even just this example here, I was like mentally taking notes of what I should do in my own house. Because this is an amazing skill to be able to learn and harness at your age, because the world will find people that you not always see eye to eye with. As a human, so to just let so I want to say to you how
I'd like to add this. Brea has actually taken this a step further. She has self-initiated several opportunities, but she's actually self-initiated to the point where she said, can we just have some time? And her and another student went over to the side of the room and walked themselves through on their own. I said, if you have a problem, come over and I'll help you. They never said anything to me. That was on a Friday about 3 o'clock. I came out Monday afternoon to that recess and I saw them talking. So I walked over. I said, is everything okay? They're like, yeah, we just didn't finish our conversation. So I mean, that to me right there says that this works.
Do you guys ever try this at home? You have siblings? Yeah, you do. You can try it on.
Yes, so we never
Oh, there's a ballpark. This is what I learned at school and it really worked.
That's absolutely great job, guys.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
First of all, Chris, I appreciate your taste in clothes. Thank you.
And we'd like to definitely acknowledge you. Thank you so much for bringing your kiddos in. Reported closed session. Closed session next November 4th, 11th, 2021 for the purpose of a discussion of legal and personnel agenda items. And now we can move to 1.07 public comments. First of all, all, do we have all the public comments already turned in up here? Are you waiting for one? Are you good? Okay. All right, so first we have, in terms of, let me double check, how much time in between? 5 minutes, and we'll give a 1 minute timeline so that you know ahead of time when we're getting close to 5 minute mark. Okay, first one is Rob Eden.
Good evening. So I wanted to take this opportunity, I know that we have heard on the news a lot of information in the last 24 hours. I had a child that came yesterday and received his second dose of the vaccine. Made it home by 8 o'clock last night, was sick in bed, running a fever, and it has been ugly all day long. If that is just a taste of what COVID is, then no child deserves to have that. And I understand that there are people on both sides of the fences, and I understand that there are very strong opinions and feelings. I wanted to thank you for all of the hard work and dedication and conversations you have had in regards to masks and where we're at. But I just want to ask you to consider, I know there's been threats by Attorney General, I understand all of that stuff, but we have a responsibility to our kids. And if putting a mask on, yes, it's inconvenient. Do I like it? No. But you know what? If it saves one kid, it's worth putting the mask on. So I just wanted you to hear that side and just make that point out there for you to consider tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have a lead at first, but I don't think the lead wants to speak by herself. So is it okay if I call you as a family first?
She can go with me and Dad.
Okay, she was on top and I'm like.
Wants to speak tonight as well.
That's fine. I just didn't want to be there by yourself. So then we can do Aaliyah and Heather.
Hello again. You may remember my name is Heather McCarty. I spoke to you at the meeting in August. As I mentioned then, I've been a Girl Scout leader, a coach in our community. I'm a mom of 4, a co-lead for the girls volleyball booster club at the high school, and a project manager at a research firm where my primary role is to conduct research and analyze data. So again, I'd like to share a few numbers and data that I think are important to discuss, especially since the recent court ruling in Cole County. I'll start by updating the numbers I shared a few months ago. There have only been 8 school children die, ages 0 to 17, in the whole state of Missouri from December 7th, out of 103,117 cases. In that age range, that's only up 3 deaths since we spoke in August. I know that's tragic, but I also know there has been more teen suicides than that alone in that time frame. And that also shows that 2 of them had underlying conditions, and that shows that there's still a 99.99% survival rate. With that, like said, I'd like to run through a few reasons why I believe mask and vaccines should be optional. A few reminders I mentioned last time. Title I of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act states individuals have the option to accept or refuse administration of emergency use authorization products, including mask, test, and vaccine. St. Louis County has again voted down a mask mandate, and even more private schools and surrounding public schools are now allowing masks to be optional. Some people cannot wear masks for long periods of time in medical conditions. You'll notice I have a shield on again tonight. I mentioned before I had bilateral jaw surgery in June. Since then, I have still had to have cortisone injections in both points. Had to be put to sleep for that. I have a mouth guard and still on extremely strong edges. And as I mentioned, that's an exclusion. It's not covered by insurance, so this is all out of pocket. And I'm not willing to use the dollars I've spent this year just to wear a mask. Also, my 4-year-old here has JIA. I don't know if you know what that is. That's juvenile arthritis, and she is at risk. high risk for TMJ. So I'm also not willing to risk her young joints for a mask. Just Google total joint replacement and you'll understand why. Speech therapy is still not making much of a difference for myself, my 7-year-old, because she still can't see faces. And a few new points I'd like to highlight. The full county ruling does state mandates are illegal and unconstitutional. As of this morning, Judge Rubio struck down the St. Louis County mandate and Dr. Khan rescinded his prior face covering order that has been under debate. A mental health, an article in the LA Times states the Surgeon General warns an emerging youth mental health crisis. The suicide rates for adolescent girls up 51% and 4% for boys. As a parent of 4 who has lost several family members in front of suicide and have even had to help clean up a loved one's remains, I'm more concerned about that crisis than any. When questioned of the severity of Omicron, even Fauci said it's almost certainly not more severe than Delta. There is even some suggestion that it is less severe. And as a lead for the Girls Volleyball Booster Club, I've witnessed myself many students not wearing masks properly with very little, if any, enforcement. But the teachers who did were extremely rude and forceful with the way they said it. Yet they overlooked so many more important issues, which leads me to my final notes. If safety is such a concern to our district, why is my daughter being exposed to oral sex in the auditorium? Why are kids allowed to smoke pot in the bathrooms by the gym? And the most that's been done about it is a cop stationed outside the door for a day or two after it's reported. Why are we using Lambert's feels like temperature instead of overlays and sending kindergartner and first graders out when the feels like temperature is 18 degrees? We're forcing them to wear masks to keep them from sick, but we're sending them outside in these temps. Why haven't metal detectors been installed, considering the number of knives, guns, and threats we've heard about this year? Why are there social media accounts called Britner Fights, Too Bad You Exposed, and Ritenour Eating School? How is that supposed to be good for their mental health? So please stop telling us it's about safety, and please do your job as board members. Those who want to mask their children still will, but let me make that decision for my children, because until I can, I will continue to make sure Eric Schmidt knows what is going on in our district, which is why I know you received a cease and desist letter earlier today. So please abide by that order. All of my resources are available upon request, and I very much appreciate your time. And with that, I would like to let my daughter Aaliyah, who is 7, say a sentence or two about how she feels about that.
What I feel about Mackin is very upset about it because I can't really see my fetish face, and when I get out in the cold, masks do not really help me. I feel if some Mackin at mine do not really help us stay healthy, then still be to, but most people died by Mackin.
I think what she's trying to say there is some masks she cannot breathe through. That's why she likes her mask, because she can't. Anything else?
I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to express my opinions about this. As a parent, coming the first time and everything was in order, around the county, and that to wear masks, and that we, abided by the rules. I haven't been in here complaining to the other board meetings and that, but we, now that I feel that we put a stand on it, all the mask mandates and everything dropped in county. I'd like my kids to not have to go to the face and interact with their friends and stuff, and not get yelled at for, wearing their mask down and stuff at times, because it does get more. Our kids have been mentioned by teachers that their masks are good masks, and last board meeting we were here,
but Chris actually had the same mask on, and that's why we actually purchased our mask, because it was the same one. It's just ours looked a little clear. It's not the dark mesh on the inside. So I don't really like the staff and teachers tell them that they're not good masks when, you know, they're the breathable mask, but they've been approved for sports and other activities. So I would just like to come back after the holiday break and have it optional. We have, you know, the shots for kids that are in school, for the parents, for the staff. Everybody can make their own opinion if they want shots, if they want masks. And people that don't like people not wearing masks, you know, they can stay away from people who want to do their own thing like that. But to go along with the high school things, you know, just some of the rumors that I hear my daughter coming home from school. I know high schools are big, and there's a lot of students. I worked at school for 8 years. Things happen. Not everybody can be in one place, but whenever she sees things, you know, almost on a daily basis that are not appropriate for school, and she gets nervous around them. She shouldn't have to be nervous in school. She shouldn't have to be in a position that she doesn't feel comfortable when we're in a school setting. So with that, I would just like everybody to, you know, take the science in the hand that we have today and come back after school break and kind of let everybody make their own decisions where they stand. Thank you for letting me speak.
Next, I have Teresa Collins.
So this, follow your family, that's hard. Hi, I'm Teresa Collins, longtime listener, first time caller. Okay, so this morning's Post Dispatch headlines, CDC finds this next variant is mostly mild. This is the same information that I've been getting from a friend of mine down in South Africa since he returned there after Thanksgiving. Mostly mild, especially in children. Okay, so a lot has happened this past month. Okay, the court ruling, of course, determined that the unelected health department does not have the constitutional ability to support these mandates without a vote by the county council. And Tuesday night, no vote was held. So the health department then today rescinded its order. Now, this should come as good news to us, to the board, because a few months ago, because we're now released from that liability by the health department. Because a few months ago, we were really concerned about the early childhood center and the mandate that came up. And although we already have protocols in place, fear of being out of step with our health department, we changed our policy to be compliant with it, despite the financial burdens that would have ensued because of it, like the cost of tuition for the entire class and positive case was detected. I don't think we had any. Okay, so last month, we discussed the possibility of maybe going mask optional. And one of the concerns that kind of came up was, well, we are coming into flu season, and maybe it'd be best to keep this mandatory masking in place. Now, this didn't sit right with me. I mean, really, flu season? I mean, that's going to really set a poor precedent. So I went to I attended the Return to Learning Committee meeting on Monday, and I listened to Dr. Kilbride talk about the survey and in his proposal that you'll hear tonight based on those results. I kind of question, though, how this survey is presented. I just don't understand why we just can't ask yes and no questions on the survey. When you start asking things like neither, why is it like, this is neither option and I'm not sure option. It almost feels like we're trying to dilute the survey from really knowing what people are trying to say. I mean, just kind of random thought. My husband said neither option, because I don't think you should have either, but I don't think that was the way it was presented. It almost sounded like people wanted it. I was like, I don't know. It's hard to know really where people stand. But you did mention that regarding to the masking, it was mostly the teachers that were in favor of the masking, and I can understand that, but with utmost respect to our teachers. I need my board to speak up for those that can't speak up for themselves. I mean, you're never gonna please everybody, and I know we're kind of really split down the middle here, but the teachers union is a really, really loud voice. And our children, they're silent, and they're masked, and they're scared. And I think that comes from our adults. We, as adults, we can make those choices for ourselves, and we will. Yeah, so I just want, my sister lives in St. Charles. She's like, yeah, my kid wears a mask even though it's been optional the whole time because they just want to hide behind it. So like a lot of kids are kind of just hiding a little bit, just like back, remember when we couldn't wear hoodies, and now we're letting them mask. I mean, if somebody would have walked in 2 years ago with a mask on, we'd been like, nope, go back, you know. But now it's just we've lost kind of precedent. So let's just give everybody a choice, I think is what I'm asking. So I am asking you, and with all the information that we've come up, even since our return to learning meeting on Monday, just please vote no on this return to learning proposal as it's written tonight. I'm asking. Thank you.
I have the website.
I just want to start by saying thank you to the 2 board members who reached out to me when I emailed you individually asking 2 questions. It actually was the second time I had to email you the same 2 questions. And because I only got responses from 2 people, I'm going to ask that question again tonight, or the 2 questions tonight. So board members, what data are you looking at from Ritenour community that makes you think masking should still be required? And number 2, under what circumstance would you be comfortable with optional indoor masking in the Ritenour district? I ask these questions to you tonight because you are the leaders of this district. You owe it to the community that elected you to explain why you are still requiring masks when the data I see shows that 0.2% of the students are currently positive for COVID. That number has been consistently close to 0.2% for the past several months. That is 2 children out of 1,000, 2. And we're masking kids for this. Is your plan to require masks forever? Because understand 0% is never going to happen, never. COVID will continue to exist and cause illness just like any other virus. Tonight, you will most likely use the survey results to answer my questions, or you can use the new variant as an excuse to force masks. But there were 30% of parents who wanted voluntary masking, and we are not concerned about Omicron variant or the next 5 variants that come out. However, with this survey and a new variant, you continue, however, without the survey and without the new variant, you continue to approve the return to learning plan in October and November, and I want to know why you never thought voluntary masking was an option. Many parents throughout St. Louis County took a stand and sent their children to school without masks today, thanks to the support from Missouri's Attorney General. You may disagree with their decision, but parents are tired of the tyranny and want to make medical choices for their children, a choice that should never have been taken away from us. The mask mandate in St. Louis County was rescinded today. A judge has ruled that the COVID health orders are unconstitutional. You say you follow the CDC. They recommend masks. They do not require them. And you have an attorney general bugging you on parents' behalf of why you keep forcing this on students and staff in school. So I'm asking you tonight, do not approve the return to learning plan as it is going to be presented to you. And you need to end forced masking immediately, and you need to give the choice back to students and staff. Thank you.
Linda.
Thank you for having me. I am Linda Henning. I've been a resident and taxpayer of St. Anne, Britner district for 37 years now. And I am concerned for our children having to wear masks when the science does not prove it. In my training as a nurse, there is more bacteria on their masks by the end of the day that is more harmful to the children than not wearing a mask. It's proven by the CDC after 1 hour of a child wearing a mask, they find bacteria that will cause pneumonia and different problems that it's really, there's no science behind it. So I just wanted to express my concern that this shouldn't be happening, and we can make the decision not to have it. You can make the decision. I can't. I can only ask you to please rescind this masking. The Attorney General has, our health department has, and I think we need to make that decision too. Make it optional at least. I think a lot of students that's creating fear, they shouldn't have to be fearful of breathing someone else's air. You know, it's just so wrong in my opinion. So thank you for hearing me.
Next, I have John Wilson.
Thank you for having me here tonight. So, my name's John Wilson. I'm the clinical director of prosthetic and orthotic care. I have maintained 3 clinics in the greater St. Louis region. I am the clinical director, executive clinical director of the Autobot Patient Care Centers for the greater St. Louis region. I am responsible for 10 practitioners that serve at the all majority of the hospitals here in the greater St. Louis region. Basically, I'm a healthcare professional. I've been trained at Northwestern Medical School twice, once for prosthetics, once for orthotics. I dedicated 11 years of my life just for medical school training. I am a healthcare professional. I get beat up all the time, every single day, and I have to go in and see patients. My clinics right now are suffering greatly from COVID patients that come in. We constantly have to reschedule appointments. We constantly have our employees coming down with COVID. It has been a nightmare. We have lost millions of dollars in our clinics. It's probably been one of the worst financial crises we've seen in healthcare in our clinics, and with our current practitioners trying to just keep their numbers so we can keep our doors open. This is not a joke. I am currently residency director. I direct over 30 residents, typically in a 10-year period of time. I get a new resident every 4 months. And I have to send my residents into an ICU where they have to watch a patient die of COVID. And then I have to explain to them that that's part of their job. It's not easy for me to tell this to you guys. Us healthcare professionals, how many are in the room? This is not a joke. This is not pretend. These numbers are real. I challenge anybody in this room to tell me right now who was the first person to die of COVID in the greater St. Louis region. You ever know her name? I do. Brought it. So, because there's non-believers, and her last name was Dixon. She was 31 years old, African American female, and she went to bought some birthday cake, and She ended up contracting. Anyway, she died within a week. But anyway, my point is, this is not going to go away all of a sudden. This is fortunately here to stay. I'd love to go away, but the problem is people that are not compliant, people that don't want to get vaccinated, people that don't want to wear the masks. And my clinics are still being affected by it daily. Last week, I had 6 patients cancel their facilities because their children got COVID. I had another employee have to leave, and then every single one of my employees have to go through COVID testing to make sure that they didn't get exposed. So I do have a daughter that goes to Ritenour. She's a senior, and I do not want her getting COVID because somebody is against it. You have to ask yourself, in a clinical situation, what's reasonable and necessary. And I think this is reasonable. And I think that healthcare professionals are really sick and tired of excuses. We do not want to see patients anymore with COVID any more than you guys want to see children with masks. So we all need to do our part. We need to continue to be diligent so we can beat this virus and beat it for good and get rid of it. Thank you for your time. If anyone has any questions for me, I'll be happy to discuss that with you. If anybody wants to come to my hospitals, come to the clinic, I'm happy to invite you to see us firsthand. It's not fun, it's not real. And oh, by the way, one more thing, I have never got COVID because I have always worn my personal protective equipment. I've been next to patients with COVID that have died with it. I've never gotten it. So that's a fact. Thank you very much.
I do have a question, sir. Do you wear that type of mask at the hospital?
Yes. No, when I go in the ICU, I don't. I wear my respirator, I wear my N95 mask. So with this one here, actually, I have stood next to me with COVID. I have not gotten it because I had my mask on.
We'll have to continue the conversation outside.
I'm sorry. My sister.
On.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Whatever side you're on, right now, you know, we get it. But I just want to thank everyone for taking time out and coming here. Oh, it takes an issue like this to fill the chairs that you're in. Sometimes we're here, we're talking to an empty room. And I know it's boring, it's mundane, we got to pay the bill. But when an issue like this comes up, it's good to hear from the people that we live with, from our neighbors. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today.
Moving to 2.01, the President's Report.
We have copies of all those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have the PowerPoint. Thank you.
President's Report. We are very proud of our students and staff despite the hardships of the ongoing pandemic. Britner students, their families, and staff donated 19,690 items of food during our annual food drive in November. Britner Middle School led the way in donations with an overwhelming 10,409 items. The food was picked up on Monday, November the 22nd, and brought to the Britner Pro Care Food Pantry located in the Rescue Support Center. The pantry provides free, fresh, frozen foods and shelf-stable items to more than 750 Britner families who experience food insecurity each month. The district's annual food drive started back in 1982 when Britner Middle School teacher Ken Crowder started the collection as a class project. Although Mr. Crowder has since retired from the district, he continues to be fully vested in the project. As president of the Overland Neighborhood Preservation Commission, our food drive was postponed last year due to the pandemic. Thank you to our students, families, and staff amazing generosity during this holiday season. Britner residents interested in running for the April 5th, 2022 Britner Board of Education election will need to file for candidacy at the St. Louis County Board of Elections, 725 Northwest Plaza Drive in St. Anne. The filing period opens on Tuesday, December the 7th, and closes at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December the 28th. Candidates can file at the St. Louis County Board of Elections between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, from December the 7th through December the 28th. Board of Election offices will be closed today and December 24th. The office may be closed as well due to inclement weather. 2 positions will be on the ballot for the Ritenour Board of Education as the 3-year terms of Dr. M. Stacy Alvin Wilson and Jennifer Lomas expire in April 2022. Missouri law requires a person to be a U.S. citizen, at least 24 years of age, a recent taxpayer of the district, and to have resided in the state of Missouri for 1 year immediately preceding the election. Board members serve 3-year terms and are not paid for their service. That concludes my report. Moving to 2.02, superintendent's report. Yeah, but would you ready? So 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I just want to put that as 4:30. Okay, just. And it can be emergency anytime.
I also said recent taxpayer.
Oh. It's really small. I need it on regular paper.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin. So, board members, for my report, I reached out to all of our elected officials. We're heading into the legislative session that's going to be starting up in Jefferson City in January. Our elected officials were not able to join us tonight, but they will be joining us tomorrow for our first legislative advocacy committee meeting of the year. So that meeting is at 7:30 a.m. Here in the boardroom. So far, we have Senator Jill Shoup, who's going to be with us in the morning, Representative Doug Clemens, who will be with us in the morning, as well as Senator Brian. So, my intent for the report tonight was to allow the opportunity for the elected officials to speak on their pre-filed legislation. When it comes down to this evening or tomorrow, we're going to have more opportunity to engage with them tomorrow for a longer period. So, board members, for those of you that are planning on attending tomorrow, should be a great session. So 2.03, yeah, in person tomorrow, 7:30. We're going to be starting off with Dr. Paul Ritenour from Ed Plus, who's going to give us an update, and then we'll get into what we thought.
NSBA report.
If we can we run the
Yes, sir.
report first?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of December. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the 2021 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators. This year's event was held in Kansas City for the first time after being held virtually last year due to the pandemic. Among the general session speakers was Gene Becker, best-selling author and the chief of staff to former President George H.W. Bush until his death in 2018. Becker is a Missouri public school graduate. She said the former president's life of public service has lessons for all of us today.
He lived life with joy, with passion, but mainly he had a servant's heart. One of his favorite quotes was, "Any definition of a successful life must include service to others." And he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. And of course, that's what all of you are doing by serving on a school board.
Other general session speakers included Pro Football Hall of Famer Tony Gonzalez and Kansas City Chiefs mascot Dan Mears. The conference featured more than 100 concurrent sessions on a wide range of topics, including a panel discussion with members of the State Board of Education and Commissioner of Education, Margie Van Dieven. The State Board of Education has now established the group's priorities for the upcoming legislative session. At the top of the State Board of Education's list of key legislative priorities, addressing the growing educator recruitment and retention issues affecting public education. Board members specifically want to see the minimum teacher salary increased from its current $25,000 per year to at least $35,000 a year by the beginning of the 24-25 school year. The board also intends to appoint a blue ribbon commission to make recommendations on teacher recruitment and retention solutions and opportunities. Other legislative priorities include addressing the digital divide in the state, exploring alternatives that replace the traditional time-based education system with a competency-based system, and phasing in a plan to allow local education agencies to count 100% of 4- and 5-year-olds in early learning programs in their calculation of average daily attendance in the foundation formula. Meanwhile, MSBA's delegate assembly met in conjunction with the annual conference to establish the position statements that will guide MSBA's advocacy work during the coming session that convenes on January 5th. MSBA's Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed, tells us he expects the legislature to consider several bills related to school boards.
I see recall being one of the first bills to be introduced. I'm a little afraid that school board elections moving from April to November will be pushed very hard. I think when that happens, we lose our identity in the middle of a big general election. And the school board running as a partisan situation, Republicans or Democrats don't have a candle completely on what's best. What's best for kids is what's best for kids, not on a party line. And so I think that would be devastating to many school boards to run on a partisan situation. But I believe all of those will come up for discussion.
MSBA will strongly oppose bills providing school board recall, moving school board elections to the November general election date, and efforts to make school board elections partisan. We'll be keeping you informed on developments during the legislative session through our weekly Legislative Voice newsletter, critical issue alerts, and immediate updates on Twitter. Information on legislative issues also can be found on MSBA's Action Center website. And mark your calendar now for MSBA's Legislative Forum to be held in Jefferson City on March 7th. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
And with that, I remind fellow board members and staff that there is the National School Board Association. They do have their annual conference coming up in April, it's right before our elections. It's another good way for us to talk to fellow board members across the state and country, along with learning and keeping ourselves apprised of new and innovative ideas and different issues that come up. For those that are here, these are the ways that we keep up with things. These are the ways that we learn. This is our association that advocates for our students. This is the way that we can network and talk to different board members so that we can see what good practices are going on in their school districts, and maybe we can take an idea or try and replicate it here in Britner. So that's how we learn and keep educated on educational issues. And with that, Madam President, that is my report.
So you mentioned that we learned from others. Others learned from us too.
I didn't want to brag and tell you guys that we had one of the best sessions down there, and our people did an awesome job. And Ritner's name is out there all the way to, what was that? Kansas City? Liberty. They're more affluent, like maybe Clayton or Ritner might be, or Clayton or Ladue, and they're trying to figure out how we do what we do. So that was awesome. That was really cool. And I just one more thing. They said the minimum teacher wage in the state was like 25 or whatever. That might be the law, you know, like minimum wage is supposed to be like $7 or $8. Without having a number on my head, I guarantee you that Britner pays a lot better than $25,000.
Deserve it.
Every bit, every bit.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Final five, special school district. Hopefully,
No, I don't know what got sent to you, but that's not. Let's go for my notes. But you can go, I'm gonna let you go first. Did you add this?
Yeah, this is just.
And flip through to Rob's. Did you say you added this on the end?
Yeah, this is.
Keep
Did
going.
Bruce get the clicker that was that handed?
Oh, I
to her?
got the clicker, so I do it. All right. All right, no voice control here, huh? All right, here we go.
All right, so good evening again. I just want to back to give an update in regards to where we are with the PAP this year. So just as kind of a refresher for everybody, we are meeting to the fourth Monday of every month. On our September meeting, we had a kind of a meet and greet. We asked all of the admin to be there, so people got to see who the administration was, who our board members were. We are still working on setting up a time with SSD's admin to come, and Dr. Cleaning has jumped at the chance just between trying to schedule it, hasn't worked out. On October 25th, we looked at childhood and adolescent mental health and anxiety. November 22nd, we did beginning the IEP process. We're giving parents those resources. How do they start this when they see a difference, when they see change, when they see something, what do they do, where do they go to? And then December, we will not be having a meeting because it does fall as our winter break. And then in January, I know we're talking snow, so we're talking summer resources. So we're trying to get ahead of that curve because those situations will fill up quickly. So this starts to let them in and get where they need to. So we have stepped back just for a few moments. I've had a conversation with Angie and with Hassan, and we've looked at, hey, I've been around long enough. I start using your own acronyms against you, so I did our SWOT. So we looked at strengths. One of the strengths that we're seeing out of the PAC is that the meetings are being held and parents are wanting them. They're coming, we're seeing our numbers grow each month. Parents are wanting that information, that community, and building that community amongst each other. We're, as a parent of a special needs child, there's times that you just feel all alone in this world of trying to figure it all out, and we're able to bounce ideas off of each other. Some of the other strengths is we're having a ton of cooperation from both Britner School District and Special School District. Special School District providing resources for our meetings, as well as the district providing us with a place to meet, and Ms. Hahn's office doing everything she can to help encourage and strengthen. And then obviously the amount of encouragement we receive from the board, the amount of board members that come to our meetings, obviously thank you for that. So some weaknesses and opportunities. One of the things that we saw was the communications. We need to figure out a better way to get that information out there to parents. I'm going to try to work with Doug's office on maybe we can work out something different with monthly all calls, text blasts, possibly getting some better RSVP. We're trying to provide some kind of light snacks. We're not knowing until we walk in that night that parents are coming out. And last month we didn't have anybody RSVP. We did not want to cancel, which we're glad we didn't because we had 8 parents show up. So we're still meeting, but we'd like to have a little bit more information of who's coming and things like that, and how we can get that information out. Again, the meetings are both in person here, and we also offer that as a Zoom option for any parent that can fit in person. So some ideas that were given through our PAC meetings were maybe doing little Facebook videos that we can get out on the Facebook page, things like that, that gets that information out to the parents. Angie did a great job last month in the SSD newsletter, highlighting the PAC and what it stands for and how we can use that to help our students. So some, I know it's threats, but I like takeaways better, so I changed it. So some of the takeaways that we're taking are, number one, these are our children first. They are Britner students that receive additional resources from SSD. So we don't want to look at them as a SSD student, a Ritenour student, they're a child. And they deserve every opportunity that we can possibly give them. And as we can work through that with parents through the PAC and getting those resources in their hands. We've received tons of positive feedback from the parents. And wow, that man, I wish I'd known this a long time ago. I wish this would have been around when I started, things like that. So I also serve on the SSD PAC. Wanted to just touch base with you on what the SSD PAC is. Our focus is informed parents, equal involved parents. So we've had 3 PACs start in the 22 partnering school districts this year. Britner being one of those, Pattonville and Normandy each started a PAC this year. The goal is that by the end of this year is to have PACs in all 22 partnering districts. So how are we going to do that? As PAC leaders, we are attending meetings and partnering with those partnering districts to help encourage and inform them of what that communication is. We did receive, the Special School District PAC received recognition by House of Representatives Ms. Rachel Prudy for our work in the North County area regarding special school district. So we did receive recognition for that. Then just to give you another little tidbit of update. So somehow, as the Vice President of SSD's PAC, I got roped into sitting on their Public Review Committee. And so as Public Review Committee, the Public Review Committee with SSD is a state mandated for SSD every 4 years. They meet at least twice a month. We just put the rest of our schedule together from now through our presentation to the Governing Council in June, and we've got 3 and 4 meetings a month. There are 9 members on the team, 3 Governing Council members, 3 PAC members, and 3 DESE appointed representatives. So we've gone back and looked at what the last PRC recommended, and the areas of review that we're going to look at are special education statutes, the hiring practices of SSD, teacher vacancy data, I should say data, I'm sorry, exit interviews, the budget, compliance, the impacts of the pandemic. We've looked at the SSD is in their last year of their CSIP, so that will be changing this year. So we've gone back and reviewed their CSIP. We've done engagement surveys, and then we got the opportunity to see the career and technical education, which I know is close to Dr. Thomas's heart. And we got to tour the 3 North campuses today. So we got to see personally those options that our students have through the test. We've met 6 out of the 10 area, or we've had meetings with representatives from SSD in 6 out of the 10 areas. And then I have spoken with both Dr. Kilbright and Ms. Hahn about this transition with the partnering districts and how that is seen, because it's something we're supposed to come back and look at in our districts and the districts around us, and how that transition is going and report that back. Talked about the partnering agreement, talked about how the transition with some of the changes in the career tech schools, and how that information is getting out to our students. So that ends my portion. Did anybody have any questions for me?
You mentioned there were 8 people in person, or did you find that you had?
No, everybody was in person this last meeting. We didn't have any kind of Zoom yet.
Okay, because I know the others.
So PTOs, we at the Britner Middle PTO, yes, we're still Zooming. We have about half and half show up for that. Just the SSD PAC, we have had a lot more of in person than we have on Zoom.
I know one of the things that when I was going to governing council meetings, they were always kind of looking through everybody's website is also the accessibility on our website, and having kind of that hotspot somewhere within that main home page, be able to have somebody with SSD so they could click it and it's all right there too. As a suggestion, I don't know if there's something you looked into or.
It hasn't been something.
When you talk to Doug,
I've talked to Doug Sophus about how we can highlight the path and the resources on the list.
No, great. I will say it's great to hear everything that's going on, because I know when I first started on the board, I went a couple times to Stacy to the meetings, and it just seemed like they weren't involving the actual school districts as much, and
me for the whole night, was the fact that 3 more. But I mean, really, because it's getting closer to the goal, and we really do need those in every district. So great, we found the right one. And I apologize because it's a crazy time right now in my house with construction going on, and I should have just sent it a little earlier. And asked my daughter to help me. She did the best she could. It was better than my I did. So I wrote it, she sent it. So here's the report. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, so we're all good. We said the core values, same, all good. Yeah, biggest thing was they were talking about strategic goals this time. And they have 3 of them, which are implementing effective strategic database systems that efficiently and equitably support instruction and operations. They're optimizing resources to equitably support students to meet their greatest potential, which of course is always great. And 3, create a multi-channel communication strategy that enables two-way communication and creates relationships across all stakeholder groups. I think number 3 is really a big challenge because, you know, we're just one district and they have to deal with all 24 districts. And so to have a multi-channel communication, I think that's very impressive, and I wish them the best of luck. And if they are to do it, we should follow suit probably. And then we just had our regular. Okay, so then they gave the CSIP update budget process, which they discussed how there's 3 tiers and what districts were in each, and how the resources are distributed according to the tier each district is in. Ritenour is in tier 1 and 2. And budget adjustments were made, and then they talked about the SSD elections upcoming in March. And that will be an in-person meeting. But normally we're just Zooming, which I think is good. More people that way. So that's my report. And, appreciate all that Rob does for our district, because it's really nice to have the voice there besides just mine. That's great. So that's my, any more questions? Thoughts and concerns when we bring up the next one? Which is in March, so you got 3 months to come up with them if you want to.
Have they discussed some of the challenges that they've had kind of coming back to school with the governing council or with the practice there? Because I know the leaders sometimes will discuss some of the transitions or changes you've experienced in September or
I
October.
can tell you that,
I'm just
I can
curious.
tell you that the next board meeting, because that will be that's one of our next upcoming
I'm just curious, because they're usually,
presentations.
they're right on it whenever they have their.
Well, one thing I found interesting was when they were talking about they did this big analysis and how everything was good, and that. And they said, well, but our concern is, you know, we just don't have enough staff. Because they talked about how they have all these little staff people. And then they said, well, we just don't have enough, which of course all of us are going through that right now. So I thought that was kind of downplayed on their part through the meeting. But yeah, there's something in the we learned that they don't. Step out. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
What do I give this to? Who gets the?
You can leave it right there. Yep.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
So.
Business items, 3.01, audit approval. His wife, and horse, and Mr. Darren. Who is Daniel Jones, CPA.
Yes, good evening. As you know, the district is audited every year by an independent certified public accounting firm. So, as you said, they're open with Daniel Jones Associates. So we get this report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. As this, or Dr. Allen will my name is Derek Gilpin, and before I begin into some of the highlights of the other, I'd just like to thank Mr. Linforth and the city of Pearson for all of their help. They really do make this as possible for us. So the audit is broken down into 3 main parts. The first is the financial statement issued and unaudited. It means that there are clean audit, no issues, and that the financial statements were presented fairly in all material respects. The second part is the state requirements, and Through our testing, we found that the district was in compliance with all attendance, transportation, budgetary, and other statutory requirements. Finally, because the district expended more than $750,000 in federal expenses, that we little over 4.8 million. They were subject to a single audit. And for this, we tested the Child Nutrition Cluster, Education Stabilization Fund, or ESSER money, and the Coronavirus Relief Fund. The last two is probably just all the CARES money together. And here we also issued an unmodified opinion. So everything in the federal award section was presented fairly as well without material mistakes. Also, with the audit, we submitted a management communication letter in which we discussed internal controls a little bit. And although we did not issue an opinion, we did not note anything. There was nothing to note. So, all in all, it was a smooth audit, no issues to report. And again, I'd like to thank Mr. Ritenour for all of this help.
Madam President, I'd like to move that we approve the 2020-2021 financial audit as presented.
Second.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Lund? Yes. Mr. Martin? Yes. Dr. Jones? Yes. Ms. Gilberto? Yes. Ms. Enriquez? Yes. And I also vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Return to learning plan.
So board members, thank you to you and to everyone who has come out and spoken on either side of the return to learning plan. We started back in October. I started making a recommendation to you for your approval of the return to learning plan. That was in line with House Bill 271. Every 30 days, our return to learning plan must be approved by the board because based on the legal opinion that we have, the Board of Education has the ability to establish return to all components of the return to learning plan. It's been busy the last couple of days. Specifically, I'll speak on the Attorney General's actions. We have not, as of 8/25, we have not received a cease and desist letter. It has not been sent to me. The initial order was reported on the Attorney General's Twitter account. When we received the initial communication on Tuesday, it was reported on Twitter, and then I did receive a communication from the Attorney General and board members. That's what I forwarded to you in the update. It's being reported that we are going to receive a cease and desist letter, but as of 8/25, I have not received anything from the Attorney General's office. And board members, as soon as I receive anything, you will be the first. So our mission, our vision, and our equity statement, the goal is always to treat everyone with dignity and respect by valuing perspectives and cultural diversity, and making sure that resources are allocated so that every student gets what they need. This presentation was uploaded after the return to learning meeting on Monday. This was uploaded on Tuesday. And so I'm going to read this presentation knowing there's been some changes since that point, specifically what happened in St. Louis County this morning. So there's been a debate raging around the role of St. Louis County guidance and the status of a mask mandate in St. Louis County, because the mask mandate as well as quarantines are a component of our return to learning plan. We took guidance from St. Louis County. We also took guidance from the CDC in building the return to learning plan around masking, quarantines, social distancing in schools, all of those factors, CDC, St. Louis County, all of those went into the creation. So when this presentation was created, St. Louis County guidance, it was in question based on the Cole County decision. As of this morning, St. Louis County eliminated their mask mandate across the county. As was stated, CDC guidance still supports continued masking. It's recommended. It's supported by the CDC. Decisions on masking will be made at the local level based on all of the legal opinions that we receive. The Cole County decision is specific to county departments of health. It's specific to the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. The legal opinion that we've received that I've shared is that this Cole County decision, which would go into effect on December 27th, there's a 30-day period from the time that legal judgment is made to the time that one goes into effect. The Attorney General has stated he does not intend to appeal. That's the purpose of that 30-day window, is there's a window for appeals. What's been made clear through our attorneys is that this impacts county health departments and Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. It eliminates their ability to enforce guidelines around quarantine and also around masking. It was believed that that mandate power existed until December 22nd. As of this morning, St. Louis County rescinded the mandate. Our current process, currently, we quarantine based on contact tracing. Our nurses in the district have been doing a fabulous job. Since we returned to in-person learning, if a student is identified as a close contact, which is defined within a 3 to 6 foot, within 3 to 6 feet for a period of 15 minutes or more, over 24 hours, the nurses were running that. We would quarantine students. Students that are unvaccinated, they're quarantined. Students that are vaccinated, if they're a close contact, they're quarantined if they become symptomatic. Our current COVID dashboard, what the data shares, this is posted out on the front of our website. Currently, we have 0 quarantine staff. We have 34 students that are quarantined. We have 7 positive staff members, 13 positive students.
As of today,
So this dashboard is updated every Friday afternoon. We'll be updating the dashboard again tomorrow afternoon. So it's Student Services and the Human Resources Department that work closely to update that dashboard. So this is as of last Friday. So pushed out a community survey, got more than 1,600 responses. It was a 2-to-1 response rate to 1,076 community members, 536 staff members responded. Specific to quarantine, the question was asked around quarantines. There are 2 options. If we move away from our current process, test to stay. Test to stay is if a student is a close contact, the student would continue attending school. However, they would have to be tested 2 times within 7 days. You can see that when that was pushed out in the survey, there was interest in the test to stay option. Then it was also the option of quarantining only symptomatic students. So right now, we quarantine if you're a close contact, whether or not you have symptoms. We would move only to quarantining symptomatic students. So if there are symptoms, whether it be cough, fever, loss of taste and smell, difficulty breathing, those symptoms that are specific to COVID, moving only to quarantining those students that are either positive or are symptomatic, excluding them from school. But we would no longer be quarantining students that are simply close contacts, whether they be vaccinated or unvaccinated. So in the return to learning plan that's coming to you for your consideration this evening, the recommendation is that we would be discontinuing quarantines for non-symptomatic students. Our contact tracing as current which is identifying those students that were in close contact would be stopped. And it would only be positive students and staff members that would be excluded from school. And it would only be symptomatic students and staff members that would be excluded from school. They'd be directed to seek guidance from a health professional, which is our current process. We look for guidance from the health professionals for students and staff. Non-symptomatic students and staff would continue to attend school. So it's really, if symptoms exist, as is a example of a communicable disease. So there are a number of communicable diseases that are out there. This can be passed back and forth. Flu is an example. If a student is symptomatic with a communicable disease, which COVID is one, then they would be excluded from school. We have policy around communicable disease. It's policy JHCC. And our policy says a student is not permitted to attend school when afflicted with any contagious or infectious disease, or while liable to transmit, unless the school determines the student is no longer infected or likely to transmit. It's part of our policy JHCC. We have a regulation that goes along with that, JHCC-R. Any staff member who knows a student is exposed or who observes symptoms of disease must inform to initiate a review by a health professional. That's a nurse in our context in school. If a health professional determines there are symptoms, if the student is infected or likely to transmit, then the student would be excluded. So all of that language is simply said. The recommendation that I'm presenting to you tonight in terms of quarantining is to move away from quarantining non-symptomatic, non-COVID positive students or staff. Now, the implementation date of moving away from quarantines based on contact tracing. The recommendation is that we would implement this new process starting on Tuesday, January 18th, which is the first day of second semester. The why behind this recommendation is there are 2 weeks after we return from winter break. In looking at the data, we know that there's the potential of spread over winter break. Attempting to err on the side of safety for students and staff, strong likelihood that over winter break people are going to be in contact with others they have not been in contact with for some time. So allowing 2 weeks after winter break, this would allow, if there is going to be an infection, if there is going to be a person becomes symptomatic, the likelihood that they would then infect others in the school setting would be decreased. Also, this would allow additional time for vaccination of students and staff for those people that may still be on the fence. Vaccinations are not required, they're not mandated. However, as a district, with the work of Ms. Hahn and Mr. Smith, we've held a total of 8 vaccination clinics. The last vaccination clinic was last night. There were a total of 340 people that got their second dose last night. So I feel good about the role that we're playing as a district to make vaccinations available for those who are interested. So quarantines, moving away from quarantining non-symptomatic students and staff, date for implementation would be Tuesday, January 18, which is the day after Dr. King Day, first day of second semester. Feedback from the Return to Learning Committee that met on Monday. There was significant support, near unanimous from that committee about moving away from quarantining non-symptomatic students and staff. There were no members of the committee who were present who advocated to continue with our current process. There were some questions that arose in the meeting regarding timing. Some members of the committee were advocating for an immediate move to drop quarantining non-symptomatic students and staff. My why took that feedback into consideration. I think as a district, we can always be better, but I think we've worked to be very deliberate and to communicate as clearly as possible the reason and the shift away from our process now without communicating to our staff and to the community at large. It could create some level of fear amongst the community. It will make some members of the community quite happy. And you've heard some of that feedback tonight. If you do make this move quickly, immediately, it would make some members of the community quite happy. May make some staff members quite happy. However, our process since the beginning of this 20-month-long pandemic has been that we've set out timelines. We've set time horizons for when these changes would be coming. So the recommendation around quarantines, before I move on to masking, maybe this is the time to stop and see if there are questions around the quarantine portion of the return. So that's the test to stay option. The legal opinion around test to stay, there's been a lot of legal work that's going on recently. The legal opinion around test to stay is changing because in test to stay, people are required to get tested twice. And so then the district would be requiring that test. The most recent legal opinion is questioning the district's ability to require a person to get tested.
Or if our nurses could be trying to have a test on site, that would be really good.
Great question. We went down the path as we were exploring the test to stay option, and KRSDL through Husky Health Center is able to do it. There are two other providers that a number of school districts are partnering with. The challenge is there's a 48-hour turnaround for the results. And then, as I just shared, the most recent legal opinion around test to stay is now questioning a district's ability to require the testing. I believe that the proper path is to quarantine if someone is symptomatic, encourage people to seek out the guidance from their healthcare provider, and then for their return to school, we would not be recommending the test to stay. No. So the health center. We are not looking at the test to stay option for two reasons. Number one, the 48-hour turnaround time for results. And number two, the most recent legal guidance questioning our ability to require tests. So the recommendation is only to quarantine symptomatic, to exclude symptomatic students.
But I know that we're talking about quarantining and return to test to stay, but are we offering that at this health center in case people do want to get tested in case they don't know?
So tests are offered, yeah. So if somebody wants to get tested, they can do the testing.
Okay.
It's not required.
So I also have a question about some of the, so it's not being approved yet. If we were to move to the test and stay option, if the numbers were to go up 70, how would that be executed?
So that's a great question, Janaya. So Janaya asked the question, what if the numbers in a school start to go up? What would happen? That's in one of 4 slides in the presentation. Got some data of when we would reinstitute, not quarantines, but reinstitute masking, because there's a recommendation to the mask recommended from the. We'll get into that in 4 slides. Other questions about quarantine? So the test to stay, why it was focused on and why it was asked in the survey is it was very much being pushed by the State Department of Education. We were exploring it as an option, but again, the 48-hour turnaround and the now legal advice questioning of district's ability to require tests is why we're back. Now, masking. So right now, current process is mandatory masking in all of our schools and buildings. It's expected of all students and staff regardless of vaccination status. Staff members and students, when they're outdoors, it's not expected to wear a mask. During sporting events, if you're actively participating, it's not expected to wear a mask. If somebody is eating or drinking, it's not expected to wear a mask. But while masked indoors, the expectation is to remain full mask. I think it's important to talk about when are we going to move away from masking. I think we're at the point where we do need to make a move away from mandatory masking, and that's what, the recommendation is. I think we need to be driven by data, and this kind of goes to Janai's point. If we move to this mask recommended environment where people will then have choice, students would have choice, staff members would have choice. At what point do we move to that? And then if data starts to go in the wrong direction, at what point do we move back to a mask mandatory environment? So as we pushed out that survey to more than 1,600, with 2/3 of the respondents being in the community, there was a lack of a desire to move to mask optional immediately. It was said that the staff members fell more on the side of not being in favor of moving to mask optional. The staff members were more desiring to stay the way things are and keep the mandate in place, more so than the community. And one piece of data, if a person responded by saying, no, I want to maintain the mask mandate, there was a follow-up question that was asked. And the question was, at what point would you be comfortable? So if it's not comfortable, if you're not comfortable now, and you want to maintain the mask mandate, at what point would you be comfortable? And there was data on that was quite compelling. And part of the reason why I believe we need to act and set some metrics, because there was a significant response from people saying, I don't want to move away from the mandate, but yet I don't know when I'll be comfortable moving to a mask recommended environment where it's optional. So combining responses, the combination of community members and staff, you can see that there was significant interest in maintaining current protocols. And then when we followed through with this question of at what point would you be comfortable, there's the responses. For those people that say, no, let's stick with it, I'd be somewhat comfortable when my child is fully vaccinated, when there's low levels of community spread. If we would have this test to state structure in place, which now legally we don't think we have the ability to do that, upon recommendation from health officials, and then you can see the significant response of, I'm not sure about that. So the recommendation is to move to optional masking, or just we're recommending that people wear masks, but it's your choice. When we would be at or below 7% community spread for 2 weeks. So if the data in St. Louis County indicates that it's a time to move, and the why behind 7%, when we had the St. Louis County mandate in place in fall, that was one of the main drivers of having the mandate in place. We would be in the neighborhood of 7%, consistently at 7%, 7.2%. Currently, the positivity rate in St. Louis County is at 10.2%. Now, you can make the argument St. Louis County is not a perfect measure. That's the positivity rate in St. Louis County. We don't have a way to specifically quarantine what is the positivity rate within the Britner community. People go back and forth among all parts of St. Louis County. People go outside of St. Louis County, others from St. Louis County. And then, from our perspective, using St. Louis County as a metric makes as much sense as anything to determine the level of community spread. So the monitoring of data, always want to be aware of some spikes, as Janai So when we would go to mask optional or recommending that people wear masks, so that people would have choice. If we're in that environment, but in a building, if we then see a 1% positivity rate in a building, then we would return to a mandatory masking environment for 2 weeks. Right now, if we took this approach, we would have one building that would be in a mandatory masking environment, and that would be the school for early childhood. The school for early childhood positivity rate right now is at 1%. Every other school in the district is below a 1% positivity. Each of the districts in St. Louis County are moving to have a trigger in place similar to this so that we can be guided by data. The positivity rate by building goes back down, then we return to a mask recommended or a mask optional environment by building. Once we initiate mask recommended, then it would be building by building. So we would be getting more building specific. So it'd be possible that, based on current data, students at the school for early childhood would be required to wear masks. At every one of our other schools, it would be a choice. And that's the way that it would be moving forward. Monitoring building by building, positive cases only. And if we hit 1%, then that building only would go back to requiring masks for 2 weeks. The recommendation for moving to mask recommended, where people would have choice, I'd be recommending that this go into effect on January 18th also. And the why is the same with the quarantines, to allow consistency. Trust is built where people can kind of expect where you're going to be. And I think people have not always at all agreed with the decision, but I think people have come to expect that we're going to be pretty deliberate about our approach. So just like quarantines, we'd be recommending that we moved to mask recommended on January 18th. Reasons are the same. We have a 2-week period following winter break, and if there are any positive cases, the likelihood that they would become known is high. And then on the first day of second semester, if we're at that 7% threshold, then we would move to mask recommended. It also allows for planning decisions on the part of staff and students. So where was the Return to Learning Committee feedback? There was support based on data from the Return to Learning Committee, support for moving away from mandatory masking. The question that the committee kicked around was when. There was voice in the committee given to a level of fear that could be created amongst students in a mask optional environment. So we've been mask mandatory for the last 3 months. It's a change. Are people going to be fearful of it? A member of the committee spoke to that. There was also feedback in the committee. Some members want to move immediately to mask optional. And the specific statement was, let's use the next 2 weeks as a test to see if this has an impact. So while there were some that were more conservative on the committee, there were some that were also saying there was agreement we should move away from mask mandatory. The question around when, some members were saying let's be deliberate, there's too much fear. Other members are saying we need to do this immediately. And somewhere regarding that 7%, eliminating that 7%. So to be clear, board members, the recommendation that I'm making to you tonight, quarantining, moving only to quarantining or excluding symptomatic or positive individuals starting on January 15th. Regarding masking, recommendation is to move away from mandatory masking starting on January 18th also. If we're at a rate of 7% or below in St. Louis County. If we're not at a rate of 7% or below, then we would continue mandatory masking until the data hits that. Can I answer the question? That was a staff member in the district.
So they just talked about their students.
Yeah, the person talked.
The way it's written, it sounds like,
comfortable. Yeah, not the person who's speaking about the students. Oh,
What would make you more comfortable in transitioning to mass optional?
yes.
I heard you talk about the staff and how they felt about it, but I didn't really feel like, was the survey also sent out to the students and the parents on how they would feel, as there's a lot more students that really compared to the staff somehow?
Yeah, so the survey went out to the community as well as to the staff, and the trigger was in place for both of them. So if somebody said no, not comfortable moving to a mass, not comfortable going away from mandatory testing, this question popped up with the what language, and then that's where we tested and got these kinds of responses.
So now that.
Yeah.
So if somebody is symptomatic, just correct me if I'm wrong, do you have an option to show them the test? I mean, if it's like a 24-hour job or something like that, and it's like, make sure that it's not.
Yes. So then what we say is guidance from a healthcare professional.
Okay.
That can include the evidence.
Okay. And then another question I was looking at all this, I agree with the timeline of January 8th. If people want to move to virtual learning, let's say, are we going to have that option to then opt into virtual learning if they don't feel comfortable in optional type of environment?
Yeah, good question.
And how are we preparing for that? In case we don't know what the inputs will be, but if it's there, how are we preparing those things?
Yeah, good question. So board members, there would be an option through MOCAP. So if you approve the recommendations, and if we move into this in a family is not comfortable sending their students back into an environment where everybody's 100% masked, they would have the virtual option through MOCAP. Dr. Stewart and Dr. Green oversee MOCAP, which is the Missouri Virtual Network. We also have the Ritenour Virtual Academy, where we have some classes that are fully virtual being taught by Ritenour teachers. We don't have the ability to put it back wide open, virtual for families, because with the staffing that's required and the shifting, we believe in the models that we've talked about that would have a significant impact on our class sizes. So there will be a virtual option if somebody wants it. It's just that it would be through MOCAP, and it wouldn't be.
We lose money every time somebody goes to know.
There is a cost for MOCAP, and so MOCAP, we can pay, and it depends on which of the, I think there's 8 options in MOCAP now that are chosen. It can be from $275 a class. It can go up to, the total cost could exceed $6,000 over the course of a year.
I do have a question about the percentage. So just so I can understand, right now it's at 10.2%. And I'm out on the website and looking at the growth to the 2.10%. But if we get down to the 7%, is it that we have to wait 2 weeks until we're at 7%, or is it that we have to be up above the 7% for 2 weeks and then we make a decision?
So the way the recommendation is stated is that as if we're at 7% on January 18th, then we would implement it right away.
Okay.
If we're not at 7%, then we would need to get to a point where it's 7% for 2 weeks before.
I mean, if we're higher than.
If we're higher than 7%.
You're still using the St. Louis County.
St. Louis County.
Right, which is a very large area compared to our little district. Right.
Yeah, so.
But that is, like, if they have a spike one day and it goes down the next day.
That's the whole
No
reason
change.
for the 2 weeks.
Okay.
Is because, you can have a spike, you can have a we're looking for some consistency.
Isn't there consistency within our school district as to how many students and staff are have COVID? So why can't we just use that as our measure?
So just trying to stay ahead of spikes. And so the measurement would be 1%. So the moment that we go into mask optional, it would be the 1%. So
Of a school, of a single school.
one school.
So you have a school with 500 kids in it, and you have 5 kids that might get with COVID, and we're gonna make it mean.
Yes, for 2 weeks.
So that one slide that we had up here showed three staff members.
That was my
One program.
The very first one where we given what things.
But
That's it.
I looked at that slide today probably 3 or 4 or 5 times throughout my work day. And I kept coming up with the fact that we probably have an organization of 500 people, kids, students, staff. And we got 20 people right there that are positive. And I mean, that's a minute percentage compared to other. These numbers here are more telling to me than St. Louis County. Because St. Louis County is over 9 million. And this is our backyard. And I think this tells me a lot more than what St. Louis County and all those do. We got 20 people. And, you know, and that 1%, 5 kids out of 500, we got affect the whole building. I just can't do that.
Can I ask you a question? And this is, like, I get what you guys are saying about it. But do you think it has anything to do with the fact that we are masked? You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that we are masked and that these students are not passing it on to anybody else?
There was hardly any flu in St. Louis County last year because we were all masked.
You know, we've got flu outbreaks that have been bigger than any of this data we've got over the last 20 months. We had to close the school down so we could all get cleared off because of the flu. And we still continue to teach our children and bring them into the class. And this is worse. I mean, the flu things in my years that I've been on board have been much bigger than any of this stuff. You know, I'm thankful that people came tonight. And I believe that we did the right thing with the onset of the pandemic by making everybody go home, stay home for a little. But I think we carried it too far. And I'm really thankful. I understand what Mr. Wilson's position was, because you know what? He's a healthcare worker. He's gonna see that kind of stuff all the time. Just like a policeman sees trauma and killings, and a fireman sees people killed in fires, and counselors see suicides. But you know what? There's a lot of data out there that shows different, that's never brought to our attention. Just like a month ago, when we talked about this, 7 of the 10 states with the highest cases were also the highest vaccinated states too. And so, you know, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And using the positivity rate in St. Louis County, I just don't think that's right. We're a very small part. You know, 1% for a building, so you got a 505 kids when we make everybody wear masks. It's funny that last time when we talked about the concern we had over early childhood, the government put their foot down and saying, you gotta close that down and send those kids home. And they still have to think, well, we didn't want to. I suggested let's call their bluff. No, nobody wanted to do that. Now we've got directions from the Attorney General saying we can't do this, and we're like, oh no, it's okay. We're going to, you know. And I think it's time that we just go ahead and go to voluntary masking immediately. And see what happens. There's germs in these masks, and I don't like wearing them either. And if I was at school, it makes my nose run. So am I going to get in trouble
now, I have to go get tested for COVID. You know, there's just so many things out there. I think it's time to move on right now. And we have a plan in place. If something happens and it breaks out, well, then we can go back to it. But it's not, I think it's wrong to continue to make everyone.
You got simple, you guys got lots of us on paper. Are really. That is, for all the staff, for all the parents, we need to get back to normal. Our kids need a normal life. My daughter's been in school for a year and a half and has been denormalized this whole time.
Sorry, right now, we have comments right now.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
On the survey data? Just one question on the survey.
Once it's open, you gotta deliberate the board this card, and the public comments. And if you have anything, definitely.
No, that's, I just know that you're the same person who answered multiple times, and I was like.
Right, do appreciate it.
She was asking what the deal was, and took that from data that she shares that this week we were bringing us because if this was 0.02% of children. I was also looking at the American Pediatrics Association, RSV is down, lots of children illnesses have been down because of the protocols that have been put in place in the last year that were not typical in other years. And, you know, the severity and causing hospitalization of some of these is larger. Also, I do agree with the state was coming us to be smaller, but how many of us actually live in this square footage? We don't move around. So we're all over the place. We're not just we just work here all the time, but I think the reality is that a lot of people with staff that, you know, work here, but they live somewhere else and things like that. So I think keeping this county data is helpful in seeing the larger picture. But this is our staff, this is our. Yeah, no, right, I'm saying, you know, right, yeah, I'm saying about the larger data, like seeing this coming out. So that because you can do that. And the other question I was going to ask was you said that the only school that would be affected right now by the 1% would be the early childhood center. So really, I mean, and that's been like pretty average. Is there any way to see what that would look like?
We've had two schools in the last 2 months that have been over 1%. Like SSC, Booter got to 1.2%. Yeah, that's been the highest positivity rate.
Trying to see from both sides is a good way to go. I was fully on the match required side personally, but I feel like as multiple people don't agree with the mask, we have been mask required for a long while and going mass hospital for a small amount of time just to see how the data go or if we spike or anything. I don't believe that would be a horrible thing. And we can just see this how it goes for a little while, just to see if we're good, if how many schools last. But if you're gonna have a multi times, then I'm gonna that's required. But I feel like this year for a good week just to see how it goes and if there's any kind of spikes or anything, I don't think that would be. Not if I agree to it.
So I will say one of my other concerns is because of our substitute pool. I will say that is a big concern, considering the fact that we don't have substitutes to fill in. So I do get concerned that if we just jump into it, we may not have staff that feel comfortable right away, and so they may not show up. and we don't have anybody to watch them, to fill in for them. It does concern me because I know that we have classes that are split in the elementary schools right now, so they'll split into multiple, like one class will split into multiple classes, so now we're fitting 30 kids into one little classroom. The other thing is in the high school, I can't tell you how many times I know that kids are actually, they don't have a teacher for the day, so they're sent to the auditorium, and so they're missing out on learning. So that's the other thing, is I want to focus on the learning and make sure that that is our number one thing that we are here for, is to make sure students are being able to go and learn. And I know that we have challenges in other areas, but if this is one challenge that we can make sure to address, that's what I want to make sure, that we have teachers actually there teaching our students. Because I know that people are not getting the learning that we need. So that would be another concern. And that was one of the reasons why I made a comment the last time about the spread of the flu. I didn't mean because I was expecting this to protect everything. I was meaning that towards actually protecting our staff so that we can make sure to have them and get to at least the end of the first semester and then look into the next week's.
The staff is still wearing. Anybody can still wear a mask who's afraid. Anybody still can. And look how many people have been vaccinated. And a lot of people have been vaccinated. So I don't understand if I decide not to wear a mask and you decide to wear it, how is that so terrible? You got your mask on. And I don't get this.
But isn't part of the mask me protecting you?
I'm choosing not to wear a mask, is what I said. If I'm choosing not to wear a mask and you have a mask on.
And so what if you are a carrier of it? I'm just asking.
Well, then what if I am? You've got your mask on. Everybody thinks masks are so safe. Then you're safe. If I'm a carrier.
How the main part of the mask is to protect other people.
I think in my opinion, going and taking the mask off. Return to school. We talk about time. That's what we're looking at. Time. We'll give people time. We have 2 weeks during our Christmas break. That's time. We talk about the break in the semester. Well, the semester break really only has a significance, like if it's a high school, where they have finals and everything for another semester, another class at the next semester, if they do. For elementary schools, the semester break is usually at the middle schools. It's not very significant. And that's just a date, a line drawing on the calendar. And the more important thing is the 2 weeks out of school. If we look at it, thinking about it, that's when the mindset will change. Get to with the parents, with the family, and discussing. Parents, if needed, if this is what we think, then the parents can prepare their kids for when we go back. And you don't have to worry about the dog either. Find you, support you, and on versus discussion. So I, for my vote, I would not mind wearing these things up until the first day of our holiday. Come back as it is optional afterwards. The other thing that 1%, when you look at percentages, and it's 5 kids out of 500. I don't know. I mean, that's my two grandkids go to the early childhood center. And for the last 2 weeks, they've come home with colds, stunned noses, and coughs, and when you ask them what are we doing for that? And one teacher said, oh, I didn't even notice. We didn't notice that my granddaughter has this face full of and everything, and she's coughing and sneezing and running nose. Didn't notice it all. And she stayed home for the rest of it. So, you know, I look at these things, I balance it out. I even said to my wife tonight, there's got to be a time it has to stop somewhere. We got to change. It spikes, like, you know, my colleague here says, if it goes up, we meet every 30 days, and we are all on calling, call us in 48 hours or so. We'll be that much to think. But from my vote, my thoughts and everything, I would rather see a change and see what happens. Because going down this path forever, we all know, we all gotta know, life will not be the same as it was 3 years ago. It's not. The new norm is, but I think we can push to get closer back to where we were. And for those two things, I would not. But January 18th. I would say that the moment we walk into school in January, we see.
So then after the ball game.
Sure, I'm gonna have 15 people at my house, yeah.
What, end of semester?
I can't hear what you said.
What was your question, Jen?
So I'm just saying, after everybody's been together with family, and then also, like, before the semester, and I did that, like, it's not a big deal for the elementary kids and middle school kids, but we also have the high school kids that have to be taking their end of semester.
And this would stay about 15 people at my house from 4 different states.
Where do you see, and what do you want to give time to?
Do you know if there's any other schools who have already moved to mass optional and how they went about it? How they handled it?
Yeah, so question board members, any other schools have gone mask optional? There are other public schools in surrounding counties that are mask optional with number. In St. Louis County, vast majority of public school districts are going to be having the same conversation very soon. I don't know, again, it's board vote to make these decisions, but I don't know that any public school district at this point is planning on going mask optional before them. I do believe that a number of public school districts are going to be going mask optional when we return. The conversation around having this is something that a lot of districts, I believe, are going to be interested in, but it's again, it's board decision. It's just, I'm sure that's not right. Yes, yeah, so we keep it with 2 seconds.
Right now, it's just, we are all contemplating the fact that we're moving from mandatory to our mandate. And the matter of is when, and when's the best time. I always have to reflect on the fact that it's really about our students and trying to maintain kind of a safe and consistent environment for them, for their learning. That foremost is important. And our thing. And from what I'm hearing, it's like I know we immediately
there's doing it right when we come back, and then there's the January 18th. The thing that I have to be reflective of is that a very wise woman once told me that when you make these decisions, especially when the district is looking at many moving parts, and to try to be very thoughtful of all those moving parts and trying to make decisions very strictly and quickly. Because it's like if you are a train and you're 3 tons and you decide to stop the train, it's not going to stop right away. And so we have to be very thoughtful of staff, we have to be thoughtful of students, we have to be thoughtful of families. And so what I'm hearing is, I've heard Bruce, sooner the better. Vanessa, I feel like we're still kind of absorbing some of the information. We feel like when's the best time? Unless you're still thinking that January the 18th might be the best time, especially with the holiday. Lisa, I'm not sure exactly, but I know with your healthcare, I can't speak for you. But you're also going to be very thoughtful in that approach in terms of the health and safety. Fred, you're planning towards as soon as we come back as the start to be able to have that process of thinking. If we were to start after the beginning of the first of the year, I mean, there's that thought that we'll be getting together. And then if your concern is when people are getting together, they will be possibly getting sick when they go back to school. Yeah, there are cases of that effect. And the truth of the matter is, we still have to have a return to learning. The question is, that's the way it is, or do we make a couple of changes so that it's meeting the needs of our students? Is my main concern. And any of the questions that you have would be great. We appreciate it.
I point out 07 is where we are with the student. So that's not 100%.
So I have a question. So there was on the one slide 18, there's a recommendation of optional maxing as an organization, community spread being at 70% consecutive. And then on the next one, next page on 19, it's the 1% positive in the building. So are we going to go
So
both of those, or can we?
So the recommendation is once we go mass recommended, then if a building hits 1%.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay.
So what about the
7% would be the trigger to start mass
So
recommended.
once they hit 7, well, we're,
But we wouldn't even do it at that, that's where it says we're at different too.
no, that's right now. This
Right.
is.
So if we're not,
If it were at 10.2 on January 18th, it would still be regular.
If the county is. Yep.
Right,
Not us, the county.
right.
So that's what Stacy is saying. Is there some kind of recommendation change? Like, do we want to make it one of these? Like, take this out?
break off the 7% threshold. And if the
For the
board
town.
supports moving to it on the
But
18th.
keep, if we're gonna do this local, keep it very local, meaning our schools. And to Bruce's point, you know, it's 5, we feel comfortable, like if we have a 500 building, we feel comfortable with 5, or would it be 1.5? You know,
Yeah, so 1% districts are going to be establishing thresholds. And so what we've looked at is we've looked at our past history of the district. When we've gotten in 1% based on Britner data is a threshold. You're going to see districts that are going to come in at 1.5%.
How big are those?
Yeah, so it's a district that's the same size.
Okay.
They're in South County, and it's, again, this is talking, that's going to be important. So I want to make sure that, you know, I don't know how far along they are in the conversation, but a lot of what other districts are going to do is they're considering their positive students and staff. They're also considering if they do have any quarantine symptomatic. So you might see a 4%, but that's students that's staff, and it's also. And so we'd be focused on just focused on the students.
So this 1% be for our data,
For our data over the course of the fall semester.
this is fall semester, where we got the 1%.
Yes.
We weren't back enough last year to have any.
Yes, every 30 days.
We got to go through this every 30.
Yes.
So in our January board meeting, then we will do this again.
This is before they.
Yes.
That's what I think. We'll get to a lot of comfort and just knowing that. Remind myself that our goal is to keep our and their community safe. Students are not just walking around. I spoke to work on this, but how many of our students live with their grandparents or with their grandparents? Like, I mean, these have to be for the safety of our children and the communities that we interact with. And so, because of that, I'm totally in favor of masking until January 18th, because you think about the amount of interaction that's going to be going on during the holiday break, and then again, just kind of giving it that time to figure out. And it's funny because everything to me kind of makes sense with regards to about how much bacteria is in this mask. And I'm like, thank you. Stay there. I don't let the bacteria out. So I mean, I think we're going to make the best decision that we have. And if we find out anything different, I mean, if we slide, if anything changes, if we find out it doesn't work, we can always change it.
I mean, if we open it up to voluntary and then.
Yeah, and if it's, yeah. we can
Right,
always change it.
that's what I'm going to.
But I also, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I think it would be my view. Is it would be better to have this in the past, but how we just go. And then, this is gonna take effect until the 18th. It's a short amount of time, but these words, all of these recommendations. Then we're gonna keep getting together and maybe changing. There's only gonna be a couple of weeks, actually, we're still gonna be before. And then we can change. Or like the 1%. Well, no, if it's not gonna start until the 18th. We're gonna.
If we accept this as it is tonight, it will go into effect tomorrow, correct?
So if the board approves it tonight, like in this version, we would communicate with that tomorrow.
Right. So there's 2 weeks in December, and then there's 2 weeks, well, not quite 2 weeks, before we meet on the 13th to approve it again. So we haven't even tried getting it to the 18th.
But some of these specific recommendations could be happening. We're going to come across 1% or whether we are already facing losing that. So even if it's 6 weeks, it's not a long time. Review, see what is happening, whether we see something we dislike about, decision of the student. For the rest of the school. And I also like the idea of being able to communicate it out to the community, to the families. That gives everybody enough time to prepare and make their decisions. So the reality is that, I mean, I don't know if you can see anything, but if there is a spike, so that, that's not. Like, that would be terrible. So if we have that spike time, so starting tomorrow, then again, there's open ourselves up to a little bit more risk of transmission. And so that would go on. in the next 4 weeks, because, and then plus the 2 weeks of option next week. And so that we would really see that spike when we come back. Right? We see it at the beginning of the semester, really. And so then to have that disruption right at the very beginning, I mean, I just. You're saying, right. Because as of right now, with what we have, we're at what we have. We have
0.007.
Because of that, because we have a current protocol. Right?
Maybe it is, maybe it is, maybe it works, maybe it's not, the other way to test it is change.
Which we are.
And, yeah, and we can go along with discussion all we want. I'm gonna call a vote. I'll say right now, I'm not gonna vote for it, but I'm gonna make the motion so that we can have it. Okay? I'll move to be approved to return the line grant as presented.
Yes.
You speaking on purpose?
She actually, as
No.
I said, she
No.
seconded it.
Yeah.
No.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Ms. Gilbert.
No.
Yes.
No.
Thank you, board members. Thank you for your dialogue. Thanks for all this work tonight. With your vote on this, we will work to communicate this out to tomorrow, to the community and to staff. And if I do receive that cease and desist letter from the Attorney General, I will be the first to.
What I guess the question would be if we receive that, then what would we do? Would we send it to our lawyers to see if what their opinion is, or would we follow it? What would be the?
So the legal opinion is that he does not have to stand at this point. The board, or elected officials, because we have policy on the books, JHCC, because we've also taken guidance from the CDC, have not had one legal opinion that indicates that cease and desist which causes the change.
Can I say something?
I was like, really? She usually says that, you go, oh, okay.
So I will say, I want to thank like the Return to Learning Plan and everybody that came and spoke, and for both sides of everything. I appreciate, and even the board, for the dialogue. But the one thing I just want to make sure, like, I think it is so important. We've been so good about communicating and putting things out there to everybody. And that is really important that we make sure to communicate it and give everybody notice and let them know that it's coming. And so I think that is so important. So I just wanted to say that I think we've done a good job about doing that, because we're not really good at communicating before. We've gotten better at it. And I just think that this is the right thing with the communication. So being able to communicate this to the new plan so that they know it's coming and people can make decisions about how they want to go forward with their families.
They don't get to make a decision, we just made it for them. Just made a decision for them, Jennifer, they don't get to make a decision.
I'm saying that we are going, that the January 18th date, we are giving families a chance to make a plan and communicate it out to the families. That's all I'm saying. Okay, thank you.
Good evening again. So last week we discussed a new way of obtaining facilities renovation and construction and energy savings, replacement and savings. So this is using an energy services company, or ESCO. Again, we received 4 proposals back to our RFQ, request for publications. And Michael and I interviewed those 4, and we're recommending that the board approve GRP Wegman as one qualified ESCO at this time. And then we will start developing projects, and we would bring a contract for 1 or more projects back to the board for approval as we develop those projects. And now, take any questions if you have.
Did they get all our business? They get all our business and all the other contractors we usually use won't get any.
So we have the flexibility of telling GRP who to use. So for instance, we use a local plumbing contractor that we may say we want them to use them. We use a local HVAC mechanical contractor that knows our district very well, so we can tell them that we want them to use them, or we can self-perform, or we can use a mixture. So one great thing about this process is that the district has a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
They completely oversee like all the stuff. So
Absolutely.
they're working, so would that be essentially helping, right?
Yes, using an ESCO, in my experience, it takes a lot of time off of Mr. Smith because it's similar to a general contractor, but it's much more efficient because the project from the beginning, and they have all the risk on that project once we approve the project and work with the contract for that price.
Also help the efficiency of this.
Absolutely.
Making sure that they have all the pieces in place and everybody dated when they're supposed to be going.
Yes, absolutely. That is the goal. Yes.
This is hot news. There's a school district out in Charles that's trying to build a.
Yes.
And their report, how money is. Budget, all that stuff. And
Yes.
somewhere I thought they mentioned that they had the same kind of relationship.
Not to my knowledge, I have not read the article or seen the news on those. To my knowledge, they have a construction manager, but not a energy services company. So I believe their problem is that, and again, may not be all they're doing, is they had a budget that was developed a couple years ago for a high school before crazy supply chain issues and crazy inflation. But also, it could be that their estimate was just flawed from the beginning. But at any rate, but normally for us, our architect develops those estimates. So I don't know exactly, I'm not familiar with that district's, the way they came up with the estimate when they took the bond issue to the voters. I don't know what the process was, Brad. I honestly don't know. What I know is that on an energy services company, once we agree to a project and the amount and the board approves a contract, that is the price. And what we're talking about is not a bid related to that district in St. Charles County. It was an estimate that was developed for the bond issue election and the public information related to that.
The prices are still going up. I mean, it's almost double the price. $86 million high school is now turned into $160 something million, and they say the price is still climbing up. And that's from $200 million bond issue, and all that stuff.
240 or 260. I think.
Yeah.
Well,
but I thought it was for that other thing improvements, but right now it looks like the high school is not even the whole body, which is sad. But I guess I thought I heard them say something about how the governance of that was going on. I thought it was about something like the same as ours. That's what I wanted to know about.
I do not know exactly what process they use, but again, if it is that, it's still, they have to get to a point where they approve a project and approve a contract with that ESCO, if that's what it is.
So we know it, we know it's this, we say, okay, this price, we're gonna agree to it, sign it, and under no circumstances then, whether it be supply chain issues, labor issues, anything like that, this is the price.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
we can legally hold them to it,
That's correct.
whether they lose money or make money.
Yep. Absolutely. I know it sounds stupid to be true, but that is, I know. Well,
You know, I'll try anything,
most
most things.
I know you will. I know you will.
Not everything, but most of it.
We've had that conversation. Yes. And that is the whole point when we talked about it in January, why I brought it up, because of my experience with this process. That is my experience, that's what happens. You hold them to it and they do it. And, you know, that's why they get good references too.
Okay, then I'll move that we adopt the resolution selecting GRP Wegman Company as Britner School District's provider of choice for an energy services company.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And if anything does happen in the meantime, before we go down to the group, we don't have to. We can go back to another one.
Mr. Michael Smith.
Good evening, everyone. You got it. So several weeks ago, there was a discussion among the board about replacing the marquee in front of the high school. And we could not agree. Well-performing facilities help us meet our mission and vision. And our facilities should provide the best physical environment for learning to occur. And all our district schools should provide consistent and equitable environments. So you would all agree that the current marquee at Britner High School, it doesn't work properly and it's unsafe. It, you know, and we know that the Britner community is proud of our schools. And the high school is the most visible school. And that marquee should be used to celebrate not just the high school, but the entire district. And also by replacing that with something is more conducive for communication, allow us to communicate in a highly visible way to the entire community. So the bottom picture shows the current marquee in front of the high school. the small bottom of the area at the bottom is what used to be a scrolling, just welcome back students type thing. And it has a larger sign, classic sign. You can see a mock-up of what I'll be recommending as I go through my presentation. And you can see that it would completely flip so that the school name is in a smaller plastic area, and then the other part would be more, it would be more interactive and LED. This shows the measurements of what we would be recommending. The sign is 9 feet 5 inches wide, and it is a total of 7 feet 9 inches tall. So the sign for the school name would be 2 feet high by 9 feet 5 inches wide, and you can see there would be a very large, very visible area that would be that interactive marquee to communicate to the district and celebrate not just Britner High School, but the entire district. Working with Doug Ray's team, we have a draft of what the top might look like. The one here was just done by the company that I'll be recommending, just as a mock-up. But this is the sign so far, it's a draft that Doug's team has developed.
I like the bigger home of the Huskies.
What's that?
I like the bigger home of the Huskies.
Yeah, like it's showing here. Yeah, because that's 2 feet high, which seems like, well, that's pretty. But when you're on St. Charles Rock Road, and as fast as traffic moves, we want it to be visible to people in the cars. So the new 5 foot 9 inch by 9 foot 5 inch double-sided programmable marquee is what I will be recommending. We wanted to go with the large marquee in order to clearly communicate to the district, and working with Dwight and Doug. Doug, you like the figure 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that was.
We believe that is what would celebrate the high school the best. It would have that 2 foot by 9 foot 5 inch LED illuminated topper, which would be the name of the school. The cost from Pyro signs would be $54,129. And I'll be requesting approval in January, at January business meeting for this project. Well, one way we have been, working through the process is for me to communicate and present so that you get time to think about it and then come back at the next meeting.
So board members, always, if you're interested, if you're comfortable making a recommendation, always take a recommendation. It's never going to make a decision.
I'll second it.
Anybody against going through?
Did you make that recommendation?
I did, as presented.
Second.
I see it. Good.
What is it passing?
No, nothing yet. We haven't voted, but we may vote. Go ahead and discuss it tonight. 54,129.
So I was
Trying to
saying-
replace that.
So my question was gonna be, it's like, did this go out for bid?
It didn't need to go out for bid because it was part of community contract. So because of community pricing, it's already gone out to bid. And so we were able to just choose Pyro signs because it's already gone to bid.
this like in middle. Okay, it says that it can be programmable. Because the first one, you should put the words is one in for control.
So it would be controlled through the office at the high school. The high school administration would work with Doug's office for changing that, that illuminated area, that programmable area. And so, there's an example of the team that's here, and then it can flash, next, information about.
Choir concert.
There you
or
go.
basketball
There you go.
tournament, or
Yeah.
Anything like that.
And then it says LED, so like.
Yes, the illuminated part, as, it was, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it was millions of different color combinations. But
That's on both sides.
that is correct, it's both sides.
When is it? It's achieved?
That's a great question. So by, once it's approved, if it's approved, of course, there are supply chain issues. So we are looking at months, so cross our fingers that it would be by spring break, but it might not be until summertime.
Is that coming out of the budget that's already been assigned?
Another excellent question. So I did not budget for replacing the marquee sign in the operations budget. However, there is room currently in the operations budget because, quite frankly, I'm very frugal with how I allocate the money, so, right, it's very true. So, but there's money in the operations budget to cover this.
And just when we first started seeing this kind of thing, so let's say there was a big up. Your cost that maybe should be over your budget. Where would that one come from? Emergency fund that we have?
There's contingency, if ever there needs to be a budget adjustment. It can come back to the board for budget adjustment.
Just because that was a large number, so I'm just wondering, like, how much did we actually have? What did you make this look like?
Yeah, that's another good question. So pyro signs would be responsible for the maintenance. So let's say somebody damages the sign, they can replace the programmable piece is small areas of, so they only have to replace just a small area that is damaged, not the entire sign. If that were to happen. And then the plastic piece at the top is also relatively. We would be responsible for the general maintenance of it, whatever that would be. And I didn't ask that question. There is a warranty, but I'm afraid I don't have that information.
Instead of big billboards, like everybody coming to sit on 170, we can actually see.
Yeah, Mike was expecting us to jump on this so quickly. He's really can't answer really. So I was going to go ahead.
When that first sign was put up, I wasn't on the board yet. There was two things. We were putting up that sign, we were doing the soccer field. And I was up at the high school working with the Rotary Club with two Boy Scouts. We were talking about the price of the sign and everything. I remember that. I hope I did not. The first sign was a little bit more expensive than this sign. I think the first sign was around $60,000. I were talking to Rachel Schilling and Mike Lindman. And we were talking about, it's strange that it's been up there that long. And how long has it been that work? Yeah, a long time. And it'd be great to have our name, Britner name, out there on Central Park Road as a beacon, as well as the high school, which is really great for the nighttime with the lights on. I think this would be great to see out there. Yes.
Yes. Ms. Gardner, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the mock-up, and that's the draft.
That's the draft.
That's the draft that those two came up with.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We like this one. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. You're welcome.
We use 3.05 enrollment in class size report. This has been like this hand.
Sorry, there you go.
So obviously, when we talk about our vision and mission, when we do this report, without students and staff, we wouldn't have a mission and vision. So it goes right along with what we're talking about. And when Mike gets to this part about classes and teachers, you'll really see a better picture of, do students see themselves, their culture represented throughout the building and district. With the enrollment report, one of the things you'll notice, anytime we look at enrollment, it switches quite a bit throughout the year. So when we talk about the state numbers, they look at what they call the October count. So some of the numbers are with the last Wednesday in September. We also use the February count, which is the last Wednesday in January. And then you might even see some November numbers on here. So it looks like sometimes the numbers are off. They are changing all the time. And we do look at those all the time. These are the terms that we use with state reporting to white, black, Hispanic, multi. This is, you can see our district, how it's changed over the years. Right now, for our black population, which is the highest, is at 42.1. Our Hispanic population at 25%, which was an increase. And then our white at 22.1, which is a decrease. And our multi at 8.4, which is a very slight increase from the previous year. And obviously, when we look at the state of Missouri with our comparisons, we don't match the state of Missouri with our ethnicity comparisons. A very unique, wonderful school district. Our district enrollment, there haven't been any major significant changes. It really, when you look at the past 10 years, but if you look at it long-term, we have shown some decline over the years, but it has remained fairly stable over the past 10, 11 years. These numbers for building enrollment does include RVA students. The one areas that you can notice where the big differences are at that elementary level, where you see Booter with 392 and Pratt at 526, which is obviously a very big difference in the number of students at that elementary level. And the high school, that includes some of the International Welcome Center as well as alternative education. Look up here. So again, this is looking at how do numbers change when we do that October count to where we are at the end of the month of November. And one of the areas you'll see where we've seen an increase is at the IWC since October, and then at Husky Academy. So anytime we have students that are going on long-term suspension, obviously that's going to increase the number over there and decrease the number at Ritenour High School or the middle schools. This was an area last year that we were concerned about because if you recall, we didn't have many students at SEC because of the pandemic. So we have seen a jump again in the SEC numbers. Looking at our grade level enrollment, grades 7 and grade 10 are the highest. Obviously, if you look here, grade 7 is the highest in the entire district. The number where we see the lowest is at grade 11. Kindergarten enrollment did increase this year. Last year, we were very concerned looking at our kindergarten numbers, knowing that a lot of the kindergartners were probably choosing not to go to kindergarten because of virtual learning. So we did see a jump this year, but again, this is an opportunity for us to hopefully improve this or increase this for next year. Homebound, this was at the end of the month. We had 25 students who, I'm sorry, not homebound, homeschool, opted for homeschool. Last year was the biggest homeschool option that we had. And again, we believe that was due to the pandemic. Our ELL enrollment continues to increase. And when you look at Marvin Elementary, that's, I'm sorry, not Marvin, Marion Elementary, with 128 EL students. That's about 27% of their student population receiving EL services. We also know that our secondary levels, we see a large number of students receiving English learning supports. So another area we're going to have to keep a close eye on how are we supporting all of the students in those areas. When we say we have over 26 languages spoken in Ritenour, these are the top, obviously, English is number 1, but these are the other top languages in that order. We have way more than 26 languages spoken. We have a lot of dialects that are also spoken in the Ritenour School District. But here are some of the languages that are the primary languages that parents put on the enrollment forms. We have seen an increase in the number of immigrant students this year at 255. And we often see that when there's a change in political changes or presidential leadership in some of the policies. So we have seen an increase there. We are currently at 256 students who qualify under the state guidelines for McKinney-Vento, which would be the Homeless Act. So typically we see that number go up as the year goes on, but right now we're at 256, with most of those students being doubled up and a large number of youth that are considered unaccompanied youth, meaning that they may not have a parent as a primary caregiver. Right now, the number for foster care is 53 students. One of the things we've noticed, or I've noticed this year as the foster care liaison, the students are moving very frequently. So even though we have 53 students, one of the students can be in 5 different homes in one school year. It's like we might be in a home for a week and getting moved to another home.
Are they moving schools or are they just moving homes? They're staying with us, right?
It's with the other school district, and if they're moved, let's say to way outside of St. Charles, it may not be in the many want to stay there, so we'll do what we believe it's not a permanent.
Because they family is one thing, but then having everything else with this just got to be so hard.
We want to keep it as seamless as possible for the students. And again, when you look at our comparison to the state of Missouri, we're very different. We're going to be very different. Our special education students higher, all areas we are higher. And we have, I believe, great supports put in place to address those needs of those students.
Yes. I'm not gonna read through all of this, but, just knowing that we are a school district, I think the, look at the boundaries is crucial right now when we look at our elementary numbers. And, areas we need to continue to focus on is that, EL populate, or are the EL population changes, particularly at the secondary level? Are we going to, how do we recruit a lot of EL teachers? And also, how do we increase the number of students in our kindergarten for the next school year?
Sources objectives are to ensure that when those students enroll and they're placed in classes, that the class sizes are adequate to ensure learning occurs in a supportive environment. We know class size has an impact on that supportive environment. And by 100% of highly qualified staff, and I wish I could say 100% of the time, we know that subs and filling classrooms has been really a challenge this year. I'm going to share with you our class sizes at each level as they pertain to the Missouri School Improvement, Missouri School Improvement Standards. I'm pretty sure the board has seen this each year, where the state has set a desirable standard per grade level, and it's smaller at the younger grade levels and larger as you work through high school. Our pre-K class sizes are set at 18 currently based on the standards set. Early childhood center. I do want to note that there are some circumstances that do allow class size to be larger than the standard, and that would be PE, but also some music classes. And we have set this year the Virtual Academy standard at 25, and that's a district set standard that we aim for our elementary LPA classes. Looking at our class sizes by elementary, middle, and high. And this is just a desirable standard, and this was pulled on November 19th. And just like Julie said, as enrollment changes, class sizes shift pretty regularly. Teachers report kids coming and going, particularly at certain times of the year, but also throughout the year. 65% of all classes, which is an 8% increase from the previous year, are at the desirable level at the elementary level. 62 and 68% at our middle schools, which both were a decline of 4% compared to the year before. And the high school, 77% of all classes were at the desirable standard, 3% less than the year before. Looking more closely at the elementary schools, and just to be clear, a section is essentially if you have, for example, at Britner Elementary, if you have a certain grade level that has 3 second grades, that's 3 sections. So each section stands for like a homeroom class for the elementary students. Looking at the elementary, similar in fits with the enrollment that Julie just shared. Britner, being the smallest school with the lowest population, has the fewest number of sections. 71% of them are at the desirable standard, whereas Kratz and Marvin have larger enrollments and therefore more sections. And you can see how that impacts their ability to meet the desirable standard. Also note that there are no class sections at the elementary that exceed standard given for each grade level. Only half of them at one currently are in the desirable.
Less than half of Mary.
Less than half of Mary. We did have in some classes in both of those schools some more enrollment leading right up to school starting and then after school started. Each of those schools also has a teacher serving as a quarantine teacher, which then impacts their ability to provide an additional class. Something that our schools also look at is, do they have space for their sections? So that's always a conversation, finding space for the sections. Hake Middle School, you can see that there are no courses at Hake Middle School at the core classes that exceed the standard. You can see there's a fairly consistent number of sections per core, but then the number of sections that meet the desirable standard varies somewhat based on content. And sometimes that's impacted by students who may get those services for a particular content that's served in a special ed classroom, which then would decrease the class size, which would impact the section.
So like gifted is social studies.
Gifted is social studies, and they are pulled out into this report as an elective, even though they are social studies.
So that's why their percentage is up to 77%, because
They're pulling those, that's a great observation, they're pulling those kids out of social studies to go, social studies to get their gifted services, which then lowers those class sizes. That's absolutely right. The total classes that there are 203 sections, and that includes the core and the electives. 126 of those meet the desirable standard. Again, 62%, which is 4% fewer than in the year before. Take middle school virtual sections. I just pulled these, and these are also represented in those overall numbers that I just showed you. Some of those sections are virtual. And looking at those sections, 75% of them meet the desirable standard, and there are 20 sections total of the virtual. Each of those are the classes that they're offering virtually. And those elective courses, they are rotated throughout the year for virtual. Looking at Britner Middle, which is similar to Hague Middle, remember their enrollment is lower, so it does have somewhat of an impact on the class sizes, but they also have fewer sections because they have fewer classroom teachers. So Hague Middle School, you can see 28 and 28 sections for both science and social studies, but the difference in desirable is much different for science compared to social studies. Correct. Gifted is pulled out of that equation, and we'll see that on the next slide. Again, none of the sections exceed the standard. So gifted, again, all of them meet the desirable standard, and those are for social studies, 100% of them. So 199 total for Ritenour Middle, there are 136 of them are at the desirable standard, so 68% total, and again, it's 4% fewer than the year before. And pulling out those virtual sections at Britner Middle, they're able to offer more virtual sections just by circumstance. So 21, one more, 71% of theirs are at the desirable level. Looking at the core classes in Ritenour High School, ELA math and science, math and science, you can see 84 to 90% are at the desirable standard, whereas social studies 51% are at the desirable standard. Some of these are impacted by the courses students take and the courses they may fail in previous years and then have to retake, which can increase the class sizes if the students don't complete those in summer school. So we know that English and language arts are the top two courses students will recover in summer school. So that has an impact on the class sizes the next year. And if the students choose, if they fail classes and choose to recover English and math, then that would potentially increase one of the factors that increase class sizes if they've also failed and need to retake social studies for science. And again, including their electives, we do have a music class that exceeds the standard. Remember, the standard is allowable to be larger in music. That's symphonic band. It currently has 38 students. And there are 8 PE classes that exceed, and they range from 34 to 38 in those sections as well. So 564 courses total at the high school, 433 meet the desirable standard, 9 exceed the state exceed the standard, but is allowable by the state. So 77% total, and that's 3% fewer than the year before. Looking at those virtual sections at the high school, and again, this is pulled from the data that I just shared from you. It's included in the data. 33% or 33 sections of virtual, and 73% of those are at the desirable level.
Last year, in my notes, I did not share IWC data, and the board asked for IWC data to be added. So that's included this year. But I will tell you, when I reached out and spoke to Mike Mayberry, as Julie recommended, because this is the data that's in Tyler, he told me to be very cautious about this data because students are added frequently, and also they're very flexible with their groups. So they move students around consistently based on their needs. So he said, yeah, that's what it said in Tyler, but I can tell you, you change it somewhat regularly. So I wanted to make sure that you do that. So 40 sections and 63% of them are desirable. Now, Julie and I basically established desirable. And so we believe that a desirable class size would be about 10 students. Remember, they're just new country, just learning English, and 15 would be the standard. But there's various standards out there online through various organizations, and we felt that was a good target. In summary, 100% of our elementary and secondary core classes met the state standard. 99% of all classes meet the state standard, and 71% total meet that desirable. We had a total across the district 1,119 sections at all levels. 794 were at the desired level. Again, we continue to monitor these. I can tell you, as class sizes increase, principals monitor these very closely. As you get to middle school and high school levels, the teachers monitor them very closely, more so, and they also call me directly if their class sizes are getting too large, as well as principals. We monitor those and try to respond as needed. Any questions?
Looks good. Do you see a trend as far as increase and decrease in district?
Increasing or decreasing district
The
population?
district, I mean, the overall number, I mean, we're at like 6,359. 2 years ago, we were over 7,100.
That was about 20 years ago. 28. Yeah. It's remained pretty stable.
And influx in
We see an increase in immigrant students, particularly from Central America. You know, and we do have a 25% mobility rate. So we have been remaining pretty stable. Next year, I would think we would increase with more students coming from kindergarten. But that's where
just curious, how much help assistance do we get from that?
they are wonderful. They are a great ambassador for us, and they always reach out for resources, people who want to volunteer. This is not the year right now for them to come in and volunteer, but anytime we need something, they are fans and friends of Britner.
And they send applicants our way too.
Very good. Very good.
It's possible. We do talk, and the administrators at the high school do talk about, there's a need to change that trend. So the problem is the more students who are not successful just leads to students who are taking classes again, which increases the class size. It's a negative reinforcing. So each year, the principal will look at class sizes, and as teachers may leave the high school, separate from the high school, the principal has an opportunity to move staff or hire in an additional content area, and then that's typically when we adjust. Some of those numbers change at the semester. So this is what I shared was first semester. So we'll find that students may have failed one semester, so it does change based on semester. Another thing that's impacting that is some students are able to recover classes in the recovery round, so that's been a positive effect. I think there have been years past where there have been discussion about based on enrollment, because they also look closely at what are students choosing. So there have been discussion, and I don't want to misspeak, but I believe there was declining requests for business education classes. So that's an opportunity, if that trend continues, potentially look at, is there an opportunity to add staff or adjust as needed. So I don't know if that, they're trying to address it. I think we always try to push for the best instruction the first time, so students don't have to fall into that loop. Sometimes they get 2 or 3 classes behind, and then it's really difficult to recover.
You know, board members, with your support, our EL population has exploded in the last several years, and I can recall when I was the principal of Britner district-wide, the number of EL teachers district-wide rings a bell. The total number of EL teachers that we have in the district now is some. Near 30.
It's not enough.
Yeah, near 30. And so caseload of EL teachers is gone on.
You want to choke on that number back there?
They are quite high, but with your support, board members, we really work to meet the need.
I think it's great. I think we should welcome everyone with the parts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Academic.
Yeah.
I'm here tonight just to share the results of the survey that was put out last week. I believe we put it out on Friday, it ran through Tuesday evening. To get some additional feedback from staff and parents. Again, allocation of time is one of the things we do have control over. It can impact the equity of the district. And I also try to think of, although allocation of time is important, most important is what you do with your time, right? So we all have an opportunity every day to contribute to what's important in our lives. So try to keep that in mind personally. Move through my work here. Again, on this aligns to our vision and mission that we're trying to be responsive to our community and staff needs, but at the same time, trying to ensure that we're keeping student learning first so that we can achieve their goals. The survey prompt, and I'm sure you guys also received the survey that Doug sent out, was thanking everyone who provided feedback initially in developing the calendars for 2022, 23, and 23, 24. And then we were seeking additional feedback to determine the timing of any potential self-care days added to the calendar as a fall break. We used the term potential because there was no indication that necessarily approved, just really looking for additional feedback. We know that many teachers and students report that by the end of October, they would benefit from the break. We are trying to determine what weekend in October would be better for a fall break, or should the days be split into 2 3-day weekends, one in September and one in October. And then we asked them to complete the survey on Tuesday, December 7th at 9 p.m. Looking at the survey, this is just the staff responses. We have 423 staff members complete the survey. So completing that survey, about 30% wanted to spread the days out, and 70% wanted to have days together as a 4-day weekend in October. Looking at which week in October from the staff, again, those that said the 1 day September, 1 day October did not then answer this question. So of the 295, 66% said that 4th week in October. And looking at parents, 637 parents responded. And for the parents, 64% preferred the longer 4-day weekend in October as opposed to splitting the days up in September and October. And then of that group, about 75% preferred the 4th week in October. And then when we just looked at it collectively, 1,070 total responses, and there were 10, almost 1% that didn't, they just put other. There were even some people that you'll see skipped that question and went right to the next question. So about 1,081 responded to the next question of preferring to spread the days out or the 4-day longer weekend. So when you combine the staff and the parents, almost 67% or 2/3 prefer the 4-day weekend as opposed to splitting them up. And then when asked those 2/3, 71% preferred the 4th week in October and 29% for the 2nd week in October. Open to any questions. That's just the day. Open to any questions.
There was no response except I don't want it. So people who responded that way, they're not even in this. They don't have any additional.
Right.
So,
Well, I did have a couple people send me that directly. I sent that to Doug. I guess, and he sent that to me. In our original survey, we did ask that question: are you in favor of yes or no? We did ask that in the original survey, but you're right, it was not in this survey.
no, I was told it wasn't in the first one either, but we didn't get that information is what I'm saying.
Okay. Let's see. I can check though and show you that original survey. Oh, so initially we said, do you agree with scheduling a 2-day fall break for students and staff to be scheduled on a Friday and a following Monday? And when we asked that, we had 5% of staff say no, they disagreed, they did not need a fall break. How we interpreted that. 10% of parents, or 85 parents, said no, we disagree, was 8.8. And then almost 6% of Spanish-speaking parents also said no, we disagree with fall break.
We got that information.
We do, yeah, we
I
do.
mean, we got it, we did get it in our stuff.
Okay. It was in the presentation last week. So board members are.
Like the Monday start.
Did we ask that question? I thought we asked that question.
Yeah, we did ask them, what's their preferred way of creating that 2-day? And the options we gave them were starting on a Tuesday and returning from winter break 1 day earlier, or starting on Monday. Yeah, so in that regard, 74% of staff wanted to begin on a Monday, and 85% of parents wanted to begin on a Monday. 81% of Spanish-speaking parents wanted to begin on Monday. This was another one of those regions here where there was conversation in the committee, and there were staff that wanted to like that, and we had to direct the students whether it was parents, really the parents drove our decision.
All right, so all right. We listen to it.
So there's always, board members, when we come back to you with a similar report, making a report for the board member who wants to make a recommendation. to the board member. Not, this will come back. Just wanted to come back to you with the data from that second survey. That was the purpose of tonight. In terms of postponing it to next month, if you're comfortable after you've got the second survey feedback.
I mean, feedback is there, questions and answers.
As we said last week, we can always collect data along the way, and the board has the ability to change this for the following year.
Go for it. No question of glory, girl.
You want to do it or you want me to? So, I make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Garden.
Sure.
Mr. Schumer? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Moving point number 7, personnel recommendations.
Board members, I'm here to present items 1 through 17. 1 through 17, I'm open to any comments or questions you may have.
You anticipate more retirements?
To do. There are, we have a large number of staff that are at 25 years or more. And I do think there are other staff members who have reached out to me for consultation for retirement, and I always encourage them to first have a consultation with PSRS. To get the best advice and information possible, and we typically come back and we talk about it after that. There's a handful of others who have already reached out to me that just thinking about it, talking with staff. It's a big decision. You don't do it like So, absolutely. So it was approved in the teacher agreement last year that if we're not notified by January 15th, there is a $500 reduction in the retirement funds that are provided for staff who have sick leave still in their accrued sick pay. And so that is driving people to tell us sooner. That's a good thing because they're always asking that too. When do I need to notify the district? When do I need to notify the district? And I was going to put out in my memo to staff just a reminder of that in a minute. So everyone's aware of that. If they don't tell us by the end of January, then it's $1,000 reduction of that sick leave compensation that is given to them upon retirement. So if there's a staff member that has 180 days, and I think which there are several. I know we talk about absences and sub-grades. We have a lot of staff who have perfect attendance and great attendance. And I think the total, because it's different by days, it's somewhere around $9,000 providing on time or for not using sick days.
They retire from here, can they start working?
So they can, there's a 30-day moratorium where they cannot work in a public school setting. But currently we're under where the governor has waived, and there's limits of if they are going to work in a public school setting of 550 hours a year. And currently, because we're in a state of emergency, the governor was able to waive that. Actually it was earlier this week in a meeting, people are asking me, is the governor going to continue to waive that? And he can't. So the governor doesn't have the authority to waive it beyond December 31st because he's no longer declared the state of Missouri as a state of emergency. So the decision is out of his hands. So now it would have to be taken up by the Missouri School Board, and apparently legislation would have to get involved. It could happen, and there's conversation, but I don't know how that
So those people have already put in close to that $550. January 1st, they can't.
Yes. And so we have retired staff subbing for us. We're interested in what's happening with 550. So that's why it was Tuesday, had a meeting with all the HR people and an attorney from MSBA. And they suggested, given the situation that everyone's in, that there's probably going to be something done with 550 hours. Nearly every district across the state is counting on retired staff.
But I mean, I think we hire full-time with it.
Oh, they could be hired full-time, not as a public school teacher, although we have done that before. They just give up their retirement benefits. So we have a teacher currently who's fully retired from our district and then applied with us. She just had to give up her retirement benefits, postpone it, so that she could continue working with us. She's done that for, I think, 15 years now.
So she postponed it.
She postponed it, yes. It's kind of setting it off. We have another teacher currently working with us that retired from the school district and chose not to collect, not to fully collect it. Instead, she's working with us as a full-time PA. She's doing a fantastic job because she's got a lot of skills, but just didn't want the load of the teacher. Yeah. So the feedback that I got through Charles Love was that she was pursuing another opportunity that she felt had more growth opportunities.
She hasn't even started working for us yet. She's retired.
Yeah, she's been with us for quite a while. That's $2,000. Yeah, move to the West Coast.
Can I ask about number 10? My concern is the date. There's still a return for students after that. And is there any testing that needs to be done? Will they have adequate?
For number 10, that particular position has already been posted because we were concerned for that timing of that as well. I was looking today, the position doesn't close for Monday. Right now it's also a difficult time to find people who are not in a contract already. There is a qualified staff person who applied for the position, who has experience, who is not under contract, potentially with a few other applicants. The one thing I'll say about some that we see on the separation list have been on leave for a while. So we've been filling classrooms with subs, and then leave time is ending, so choosing to separate.
Will we accept recommendations from the 17?
Wait, I'm sorry. Nope.
What? What do you say?
So it's 18.
Sorry.
There was an
Just saw
addition
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's accept 1 through 8.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the commentary Jeff and. Yeah, it's a different. At what time? 7 o'clock. Oh. It's just not. The 20th? I think so. Let's send out the, I just. Something that kind of came up the last 2 days about grandparents. Guardians, so it just, just kind of got me thinking like when you're and how to make grandparents not but really know that they are faithful and really important information in students' lives. So like I know you just had parents, groups and things like that. So just thinking through like how we can make our language a bit more inclusive for grandparents. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. And now we have to have it all. I like to say the word family. Family. I do have one. So I'm gonna make a little adjustment on the time because I didn't realize the main concert was on the same day. But on Thursday, December 16th, we have the Twice a Night before Christmas bags being put together. So that'll be a Thursday evening, and I was gonna do 6 o'clock, but I think I'm gonna try to move it up so that way we can get done with it quickly. I will be there. I'll have everything set up. So if you want to come, donations are accepted. We appreciate it. We do hats, gloves, scarves, snacks. Got my hot cocoa from my normal hot cocoa donor. And toys and books. So books are always the hardest to get, but even good, like used, well-kept books are nice to have. I almost want to start a little thing where people donate used ones. I'd like for them to write a little note and them to the next kid, because I always think that's. But that will be held at New Horizons in the basement as normal. So if you can come by, I'll probably put up to 5:30, so that way, usually it takes us a little less than an hour, as long as I have everything that I can organize. I always do hats and gloves, and if I get scarves, that's great. We did that one time, but the socks have been kind of not holding up. Like they kind of fall apart when they're cheaper. So I do hats and gloves. I love to put the snacks in the bag. I always try to make sure like they're tree nut free, because you just don't know. And then toys. So I always go to like Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Target, or whatever. And one thing I've been sharing with people that have asked me about it is if you find a good deal on a toy, it's okay to buy like 5 of them. And the reason I say that is because it's not going to the same house, it's not going to the same family, it's going to, different, it could be a different school. And then just so you know, it's 25 students for each of our elementary schools. So, and then toys and then books.
We're all on this side, but just think about just being transparent about where my hesitancy was with the sign. Think about some of those signs. Dollar amount. We've got students in the auditoriums that's done. I'm just asking, I'm just imploring us,
Because if I am a constituent and I'm just looking at, okay, we just have to put out $1 on the sign. Dang, that's what we're supposed to do. So I'm just asking us to creatively. I know we're doing the best that we can, but. Here's some of the things that. The sign is pretty, right?
The way around, not only for the students, when they see their picture up there, or their group up there, or congratulations, blah,
And I
blah,
was
blah.
saying
And
that.
community.
I
That's
was saying
great.
that.
Yes.
Sits across the board with that, where we see a variety of students, not just certain clubs, certain organizations, certain athletic programs.
Right.
The truth in our high school, a lot of that goes towards certain clubs, certain organizations, and certain athletic. Not all. That work, just to make sure that sign is also.
Since last week, I think it's unfortunately, because I had personal circumstances, but there was a pretty like gathering and some students from Ritenour, also some elementary students there. I know the girl who went and she told me about it, and there was dinner and snacks and things. And I don't know, I don't want to thank all of them for going to that, because she said it was a it was like a equity gathering.
Where?
I think concert, but it was, in campus, there. And they, that was the panel that I invited to. The speak at, so it's that same kind of. So they do education. Yeah, so they just, a lot of it is around organizing students, parents, teachers. I assume it would be, well, just very like. But, oh, I think the main component was like a teaching type of, if it's the same one that I'm thinking about. Talk a little bit about, I'm not gonna listen, but I can send you the link and stuff. Yeah.
We approve the consent agenda items 4.01, 4.06 as presented.
Yes.
Yes.
Closed sessions. 5.01, closed session 6.0.021.
Second.
Dr. Thomas?
Yes.